Welcome, everyone, to Legion Gaming. I'm your host, Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by co-host, Deucy.
Hello, everyone.
Deucy, how are you on another fanciful Saturday afternoon in which we are recording?
This is going to be a good day. I mean, good weather and good topic to be talking about.
Yeah, it's we're getting spring weather, which is always nice because I'm a person who typically hates winter, and also I hate daylight savings where it gets dark earlier.
Yeah, luckily that's been staying lighter a little bit later.
Yeah,
and but I've heard that it's already rain in the forecast for the upcoming week.
Oh, I don't even want to hear about that.
Yeah.
But it'll work because when you're at home and it's raining outside, you know what you could do, Deucy? You could play some GameBoy Advance, which is...
I won't be at home during the rain because the AT&T golf tournament is coming up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so you will be out in the rain.
But you do make a good point about handheld games. Those are some of my favorite through all these years.
Yeah, it's Pro Bowl Gaming's a real sort of great thing for everyone. And today's episode 80, which is incredible that we're at episode 80 now after a couple years.
Damn.
Yeah, we're covering the Game Boy Advance. It's celebrating its 25th anniversary later this year. And I was just kind of like looking at, sometimes I look at my shelf or I just look at whatever random stuff to kind of get an idea for a game I want to cover. And I was like, it'd be really cool if we covered the GBA because at that point in my teenage life, it was a huge, huge deal. And the more I was looking into the system itself and kind of revisiting things, I was like, wow, I really did love this system back then.
Oh, yeah. I think until the Switch, I think this was like my favorite portable system.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Even more so than DS and 3DS.
I definitely played the GBA more than the DS and 3DS. Part of it's because I was more console gamer, plus my money was more tied up in console gaming.
Yeah.
It's not like we were, when I was a teenager, I could just save up my money and GBA games were like $30, maybe 40 at most, right? And you get them dirt cheap used. It's different times. So it's just, I kind of naturally shifted away from portable gaming until the Switch. But I still bought the DS and 3DS, but the GBA was like the cream of the crop as far as I'm concerned. So I think it'll be a really fun episode to cover really the history of the GBA, what led up to it. And then we're also going to talk about some of our favorite games and series on the system and some hidden gems, because that's always really the most fun part about revisiting these things.
I think I played this more once I got a DS because I didn't have the SP with the backlight. Mm-hmm. It's funny enough, years later, my dad got one and he's still playing that one to this day.
Yeah.
But I had the original see-through purple Game Boy Advance with no light, hard as hell to see things. And somehow I still enjoyed a lot of games on there. But then the DS came out and I was like, oh, thank God, finally.
Yeah, the DS, that was the thing is I love the DS for many reasons. And one of the biggest ones is that it was a backlit screen that could play all GBA games.
Yep.
So that made it an easy buy for me once I had the money for that. Because I was like, well, now I can play everything I already own, and it looks even better than it did back then.
Was it only backwards for GBA, or could it do...
No, it was only GBA.
Okay.
I wished it went back to GBC and GB, but I remember I tried to put the card in there and it didn't work. So
I did like that the GBA was backwards with all the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color.
Yeah, and we'll talk all about that stuff because the GBA, like I said, it's a really awesome system. I know it has a lot of fondness and a lot of reverence now, but it is pretty wild that it's been 25 years since it came out, and it did some really cool things just as far as like peripherals. It's some of the games that were on there, so I think this episode is going to be a really great time. Before we get to that, our last episode was our top 10 first-person shooters, which was a really good time. Deucy and I shared our favorite first-person shooters. Honorable mentions I think we had on there were like, there's like probably 30 of them on top of everything else.
Yeah, we had a whole separate list.
Yeah, so amidst all that, because that was a listener request by Diluted Thought, and then our friend Nick, he sent his own list over, so I'll read what he has on his list. He says...
Are these ranked or in no particular order?
In no order, from what he says. Nick is
sense.
It's great. Nick always sends the list, and they're not necessarily in order. It's probably just like what's top of mind.
Yep.
He has a really fun list, though. He has, in no order, by the way, again. He has Halo 2, Perfect Dark, Time Splitters 2, Nightfire, which, great choice, Doom 2016, Doom the Original, Metroid Prime Remastered, Unreal Tournament 2004, which I really love that game, but I didn't get to play as much as Quake 3, Half-Life 2, BioShock, and some honorable mentions he put on here, Killing Time Resurrected, BioShock Infinite, GoldenEye, Aliens vs. Predator, which I'm sure he's probably talking about that 1999 one that I was mentioning.
Oh, yeah.
And Modern Warfare 1, which it's Call of Duty 4, which is on our list as well. So fantastic list, Nick. That was it's always fun seeing other people's lists and what they come up with and what they have more fondness for. I think he has a really well-rounded list overall.
Yep.
Then our friend, what do we have here? The Turbo Force 1984. He put up a few of his picks. He put GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, Doom 2, Duke Nukem 3D, Alien Trilogy, which is great on the PS1. I really like that one. It's kind of like Doom, but Alien.
I think you recently picked that up, didn't you?
I found it at one of the swaps we went to like last year. I forgot what it was.
Nice.
Some game swap, yeah. Alien vs. Predator 99, that's the PC version. Dark Forces 1 and 2. And he also mentioned Half-Life. And one that doesn't really get mentioned too much, but there's definitely clamoring for remaster. No One Lives Forever, which, if you remember that's like that spy first-person shooter from the early 2000s that made a big deal at the time. And I think it's one of those things where the rights are tied up or lost or who knows. But I know Night Dive has been trying to get the assets and trying to get rights to remaster that one, because I never got to play that back then.
Oh, I did. I randomly rented it and I just loved it right away. I was like, wow, this is something I was not expecting, especially on the PS2. And then I never got it until years later. I found it somewhere and it was cheap still. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I got to pick that up right away.
Yeah, I forgot there was a PS2 price. Should keep an eye out for that, because I don't even know if I can get it on PC. I think I have to get it to like My Abandonware or something, which is just
wow.
It's sort of like the wasteland of games that don't have rights. So that means that they also don't run well on modern systems most of the time without like hacking it through in some way.
I feel like I've seen the PS2 port recently at a couple of the shops that we frequent.
I have to keep an eye for that, because I'm sure it's not very expensive, because I know that port's I don't think it's obviously not as good as a PC one, but it's like the same thing like with Deus Ex, where it's like it's on the PS2, it's accessible.
It's
you
good
kind
for
of
the
deal
PS2.
with it. Yeah, it's great for the PS2. Yeah. So if anyone else out there wants to send us your favorite first-person shooters or any episode ideas, you can reach out to us at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. And we're also more prominently on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, where I post collection stuff and movies and all kinds of random stuff that probably makes me laugh and hopefully makes others laugh just the same. Or maybe they see something cool, or like a receipt I might post at some time. Like, check this out, something I got in 2001 for no reason.
You gotta show them that recent one about the joystick that you found.
I know,
your brother found.
My brother found a receipt from 1995 for a joystick I got. That it was probably on my birthday, because it was a few days after. So it's always fun seeing time capsule stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah. But before we get to everything Game Boy Advance, Deucy, what have you been playing lately?
A time capsule of games.
I think that's always the most fun time. A little bit of, like I always say, a little bit of comfort food sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't played anything new recently, but I did go back into Resident Evil 8, and I finished the DLC for that, the story of Rose. What was it called? Shadows of Rose, I think it's called, or something like that. That was a really good, quick playthrough. I think my final time was like 3 hours 28. And that's just because I was kind of wandering around looking at the scenery, making sure I didn't miss anything. But then that inspired me to get back into the main game, and I've started New Game Plus on that one, but this time in first person, because I didn't do the original playthrough in first, because third was now available to me. And it's weird that, like, while I'm doing this all in first person, it's kind of how I remembered the game, even though I played it in third the first time. I'm like, no, this all seems very familiar. I think it's because of the way that they make the third person, like we mentioned maybe on one of our previous episodes, where it's not directly behind you like a lot of games that are supposed to be third. You're off to the side, and then the cursor's there, and then it's still sort of treating the environment like a first person game.
It might also have to do something with the field of view. I don't know how big of a difference is between third and first person. And that might be factoring where it's like they're very similar as far as how much range you have in your screen. So it might be that case where it's like it seems familiar because you kind of have that similar range, you know?
Yeah. And no matter what, I'm about to get into the second building, with the infamous baby in the basement. And no matter if I'm a badass with all of my guns from New Game Plus or playing in third or first, that area is going to creep me the hell out.
Yeah, it's really effective too. I think it's the one level in the game that is, I'd say it's pretty drastically different than the rest of the game, because you really don't have weapons, and it's more just almost like a walking sim survival kind of game.
Yes, very much.
But it's great because it's just enough different to where it fits with the story, right? It's sort of like this whole twisted dollhouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that part was definitely one of my favorite parts of the entire game. It was really great.
It harkens back to the previous game, Resident Evil 7. You're just in a very enclosed house space, and you can't see very far in front of you, and there's just like a lot of psychological horror. The other game I've been playing, like I said, it's a throwback. I'm still on the Mega Man X kick. So I'm in X3, and I'm all the way to the final boss, and I can't play anything else on my Switch because I am at literally the final boss, and it's like it's in a sleep save state right now, and I don't like if I leave the game, I'm gonna have to do, I think, pretty much all the Sigma levels over.
I believe
again.
so. I don't think that's something they changed over any of the X games. Is when you get to the last set of levels, like sort of the Wily Castles proxy, I guess we'll call them.
Yeah,
you have to restart if you get like a game over from the first one. So if there's 4, you're all the way back at the beginning, which can be a crappy marathon depending on the game.
Very much so in this one, especially like the boss refights were a little bit of a slog for me in this one. So yeah, I'm just like, even when I game over, luckily they start you right back at the last level, the one leading up to Sigma. So you get 2 lives, 3 lives if you count 0, and I'm just going to keep redoing it over and over again and not switch to any other game until I beat him.
It's funny because I was, I fancy myself reading my old gaming magazines. I was reading through one while I was in the bathroom, which is kind of funny, but I was reading an EGM.
Very classic.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of doom scrolling or something, right?
Yeah.
But I found you text me about X3, and I had an issue of EGM that happened to review X3, and they didn't give it bad scores. It was like, I think it was like 7s and 8s or 7s and 6s, right? And the review really wasn't negative in any way. They just said what was always common at that point in Mega Man games, where we've seen a lot of this before. They did do some things with like the random encounters or sort of the extras and hidden stuff and like the extra armor. But the worst feature, and I totally thought of you right away, where they said was, this is just too freaking hard.
Yeah, like
they said, of all of the X games, this is by far the most difficult and it's the most challenging to get through. And I remember that being the case too when I played through it on the collection when it came out. Like, I breezed through X. X2 was, I think, pretty balanced well. I feel like X2 wasn't too hard. You'd have to do some learning, but X3 is almost like, look, like we know you've played the hell out of X1 and X2. We're going to crank it up to like 11 and just make everything so much more difficult patterns, more damage, a hellacious boss fight. And I remember I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do that again because there's so much to do.
Yeah, if I can finally beat that, and I've gotten pretty close on the second form and everything. If I ever beat it, I'm going to be like, well, I did that. And I'll put it away. I just know that I did it.
Yeah, you just want the satisfaction. Like, I'm on a streak. I got to beat X3 at least once.
Yeah, I can go back and replay X1 over and over again. But X3 is like, okay, we'll put that on a shelf, on a pedestal. I think it's the level layouts and just the enemies, even the minor ones, seem to hit harder than in the other games.
Yeah, it feels like you really have to be careful with getting hit by enemies, because sometimes, like, I admit, like, I'll tank through because I know that I can eventually get health.
Yeah, but
this is like, so few hits, it's over almost.
And I've also noticed, because I've been doing some farming to build up my sub tanks, especially when I burn through them in Sigma, they don't do a lot of health drops.
And, they're really stingy with those, huh?
Yeah,
that makes sense too.
But they are also like really quick on the respawning of enemies. Almost, that's probably another downside to this game, is like the respawn time. If you just go 1 pixel off of the screen and back over, they're back again. And you're like, what the hell? I wasn't prepared for that. I was just sort of like resting my thumb on the controller, and all of a sudden it's right back again. So it's like good for quick refills, but also bad because if you finally get through something and then it comes right back because you sneezed, then you're screwed again. And
you lose more health than you recovered.
Exactly. I think it also, the reason they hit harder is they really want you to find the body part upgrade and then the like special extra chip that knocks your damage down to maybe like 1/4 or something like that. And then it'll start to feel like a regular Mega Man X game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed X3, but it's the one that's, I obviously enjoyed the least between the three.
Until 6, 7, and 8.
Until 6, 7, yeah, well, that's true. Of the early era, I would say.
Yeah,
that's fair to say, because I didn't even get to play through much of X6, and then, X7 is awful, and X8, we talked about in our Mega Man episode, like, it's not great either, but it's not X7.
And luckily, they did that D-make of it.
Yeah, that's right. That was a really cool little 2D thing. I played that for a little bit on PC. It was an interesting idea that I wish Capcom would also do.
Yeah.
Is that the only thing you've been topping on? Oh wow, dude,
really,
you've been slimming on Mega Man X.
And and I'm also sticking with a little to the left. I've been doing my dailies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you finished that game.
I finished it. Like, I 100%ed the main game. I 100%ed the Holiday Archive section. So now I got to get some DLC and also continue with my dailies.
There you go. Your daily organizing.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. I've been playing. Well, I did finish Sonic Frontiers. I got through that after 18 and a half hours, which is much longer than I anticipated.
For any Sonic game.
Yeah, it's, I stand by what I said on the last episode, where I was kind of correct in my assumption saying that it probably gets repetitive towards the end, because it really does, because it's just, You go through collecting certain things, you're going through certain challenges, you go through the levels. Like it's a really great gameplay loop, but the game does do a lot to keep the variety going, because like not every challenge is the same. But then some of the issues are there, like the same Sonic issues you dealt with in Sonic Adventure 1, where it's like the camera might change at the worst time and you fall to your death or something. And there's certain parts where you're climbing these towers near the end of the game that like one mistake like that, you're like plunging down like 600 feet or whatever it feels like.
God, that feels like Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, it's like I can't think of like the game that did that. If there was like where you're climbing like just endlessly. It's almost like a Mario thing, but in 3D, right? And you have to toggle these switches like 6 times, and they're really just wild challenges. Like actually, they're really cool. But it sucks when you fall and it's not necessarily your fault, right? Like I know when I miss a jump, like it's my fault, but it sucks when like the camera shifts and I was like, oh geez, like I just fell half a mile down and I gotta go back up. But I really loved it. It's a solid like 8.5 at best. It's like a great Sonic Adventure 3. I think it would be hard to love for some people though. Like you really have to kind of get in the gameplay loop and enjoy what it's trying to show you and like how to progress and everything like that. Because the environments do change, but they're not like they don't change that much. Unfortunately, there's some really annoying parts where it's like I didn't know where to go for some of it because it's like there's only usually one way to get to a section. It's like I can't see where I'm supposed to go. Like with that whole drawing issue I told you about. But really great game, really great Sonic game. I don't think I'd ever go through it from beginning to end again. Like I might go back and do some cleanup, but it's a great game. I don't know how people received it. I know it sold well, but I'd say it's worth checking out.
I don't remember hearing anything really bad about it, like Sonic 06 or really a lot of the modern Sonics. So it was sort of like, oh yeah, that exists.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it feels like. And I think it deserves a little bit more attention than that, but it's super solid for what it is. Mm-hmm. I've also been dabbling in the Final Fantasy VII Intergrade port for Switch 2. This is really like one of the most impressive games on the Switch 2.
I heard it was like really good for Nintendo.
Yeah, it's really surprising because I'd also seen the videos before that. Obviously, like I'd seen them on Digital Foundry and the previews and whatnot. And I've been playing it in portable mode, and it really is a pretty stunning port. Like it's somewhere between like a high end PS4 game and like a PS5, like somewhere in between, like as far as like just detail and texture and everything like that. But it runs really well. It's really gorgeous. Of course, I enjoyed the game to begin with when it came out, so I've been really kind of enjoying that in portable mode, like while I watch something.
Oh yeah.
They just announced that Rebirth is coming out in June, which I'm really curious how that's going to perform because that wasn't the best performing game on PS5, which is much more powerful hardware, and it's also like way more open and open world compared to the first remake.
Because it was pushing the PS5 to its limits.
I think it's just
they just didn't optimize.
I think it just wasn't optimized. Like when I played that at launch, I'm sure now it's probably better, right? Yeah, and also there's a PS5 Pro upgrade that I beat the game, and the PS5 Pro came out way after that, so it's like,
oh yeah,
I have to go back and replay it. But I'm curious how the Switch version is going to perform because I don't know, it's just interesting because the Rebirth is just such a much more massive game compared to Remake. So I'll probably end up getting it just because I did love the game as well. I think that was my game of the year last year, if I recall, right? Was it number 1 or number 2? It was one of the two.
It was up there, but I don't think no, Clair Obscur was your last year.
Oh no, the year before. I'm sorry, the year before was Astrobot, and then Rebirth. I think it was.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. Yeah. And then the last game I've been dabbling in is Resident Evil 6. I got back into that with Vito because he never played before. And our next episode coming up in a couple weeks is going to be on Resident Evil 4 because on that date that we released the episode, Resident Evil 9 Requiem is going to be out, which Deucy and I are stupidly excited about.
I haven't been this excited for a release since I don't know when. Like maybe the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Or Resident Evil 4 remake, I guess, where the last one would come out.
That's weird. I wasn't even that excited for that one.
Really?
Remember, in my head, I was like, oh, it's not going to be that much of an improvement.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was proven wrong. But yeah, when this one, I started watching more and more videos about it because you were saying, oh, we should do Resident Evil 4. And I'm like, do they connect? And then I started watching the gameplay, the brief snippets, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because it's great because they made a conscientious effort to design the two characters differently. So Grace is more traditional Resident Evil, like survival horror. And like there's even a detail if you look at the trailer where it's like her hands are kind of shaking when she holds the gun because she's obviously timid and scared to fight zombies.
Yeah, that's going to be rough because
the
zombies already bob and weave a lot.
It's also great because they also include a classic mode, which involves ink ribbons, limited ink ribbons for saving. And then the Leon parts, he's like he's more encapsulates like Resident Evil 4 and 8. So he's more action oriented. Like when he holds the gun, he knows where he's shooting. So it's like he's much more seasoned. So that looks like they're kind of, I don't know how it's going to work. I'm sure it's like you'll probably play this section as Grace and then Leon and kind of back and forth.
From what I saw in one of the clips, it was like you go through this one section as Grace And then it's kind of like in Code Veronica when you switched over to Chris and replayed the island. Like you go in as Leon, stuff has probably already happened that you did with Grace, but now Leon can just go through and just like truck everybody.
Yeah. So I'm really, really excited for when that comes out on February 27th. And then our new episode for Resident Evil 4 is going to launch that same day, which we're going to cover obviously the original and the remake. But with this, with 6, Deuce and I have talked about before, where it's like we know it's not a great Resident Evil game at all. It's arguably one of the worst as far as themes and everything else.
Yeah, get the title off of there, but it is a fun ass
It is so good
co-op, couch co-op, however you play it, just play it with a friend.
It's so funny to play because it's I'm always reminded when I get into it, because I played through most of the campaigns, at least once or twice with different friends and whatever, and just solo. But Vito's never played it, so I was telling him, it's like, okay, just every scene we get in here is really just like the end of every other Resident Evil game, where it's just there's zombies everywhere, there's explosions.
Yeah,
you really don't get a chance to breathe. And he's like playing it because he recently played through 7 and 8, I think, within the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling him, it's like, just brace yourself for what this is. There's quick time events.
Has he ever done like 5?
I forgot if I think he said he's played 5. I can't recall. I don't remember, but 6 is just totally foreign to him. So the first chapter which is like pretty lengthy. It's like an hour long or something like that, hour 15. And it's just like a constant just flood of zombies. And
what is happening?
I was thinking to myself, because I was talking to him about it too. I was like, it's really wild that this game came out, I think it was like 2011, 2012. And that was really sort of at the peak of when zombies were really in sort of like the cultural zeitgeist, where it's like there's Walking Dead, there's a billion different zombie movies.
There was like the Left 4 Dead games.
There's a bunch of zombie games, often ones like Vampire Night on 360. And it's weird that like Resident Evil was kind of like in line with those, where it's like they're all action oriented and like just, now it's about hordes of zombies and like trying to escape with these survivors that are all really meaningless because they all die at the end. So for me, it's interesting to kind of look at that in that perspective, where it's like, of the time, like I could see why Resident Evil did that. It's also was one of the best selling Resident Evils for the longest time. Mm-hmm. So for as much as we can hate for what it wasn't, it actually did a lot of cool stuff for what it was. It's a great action co-op shooter.
I mean, with, like you said, all the other zombie stuff that was coming out, they could have gone and done what Resident Evil 7 did, sort of take it back to its roots, and then they would have been still different enough that people would have been like, oh yeah, I definitely want a Resident Evil over these other generic zombie games.
Yeah.
Because Resident Evil 6 just sort of became a generic zombie game.
That's really what it is. Like, that's all it is. Like, it's a generic zombie game wrapped with Resident Evil characters and some lore that really drive it.
It's kind of like when another game gets other characters in their DLC, like they shouldn't even be there, but now they are. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was like a generic Left 4 Dead, not even that, but like a co-op game, and then you're like, hey, here's a Leon skin.
Yeah, that's really what it feels like. Yeah, but it does work really well for what it is, and I think if Resident Evil 5 didn't sell so well, then they probably wouldn't have made Resident Evil 6, right? Like maybe they would have dialed it back and gone more to their roots, quote unquote. But I think that's the thing, is that Resident Evil 5 sold well. So they're like, well, we could do this all over again and expand even further, which is really what it is. Like, it's Resident Evil 5 just expanded to a little bit more refined, a little bit more realized, and like just total nonsense with the story and just all the enemies. It's really crazy.
I watched this clip of this guy that was ranking Resident Evil games, and he mentioned that like 6 had the co-op that 5 does, but it had better combat because 5 still sort of had tank controls.
It did.
And 6 finally refined everything, so you didn't mind having to shoot all those zombies because you could feel empowered to do so.
Yeah. And you also get the little experience or skill points to unlock skills. Like it's an anti-Resident Evil game, but I still love it.
Yeah.
It's so fun. It's so dumb. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting episode because we didn't do like a ranked list like we did with the Game Boy Color.
Yeah, this is a little bit more informal.
I like this retrospective on a system because this one deserves it.
It does, and I think, like I said, when I was revisiting this system, I really I sort of rediscovered how much I loved it, especially back then because of it really was a portable Super Nintendo, right?
Yeah.
And that's the things we also covered not cover the Game Boy, but we did I think it was the top 10 Game Boy games we did way back. It was like episode 29 or something like that. So
Game Boy and Game Boy Color.
Yeah, or excuse me, episode 39 way back in August 2024. So that's a year and a half now almost. Pretty wild. So we have, we went a little bit more in depth about the history of the Game Boy at that point and Game Boy Color, but I think it's important for the Game Boy Advance to really recognize how long the Game Boy existed before we got a color Game Boy system that still didn't have a backlight, even though its contemporaries did in the mid 90s. So we asked a couple people to send their lists over, or if there's any shout outs. Diluted Thought sent out a small game list. He said Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. He said definitely worth talking about, although I'd never call it a hidden gem, which I agree with. I think that's just a fantastic game to begin with. He said, I heard Ninja 5.0 is pretty sweet. It's on my summer slate, and it just got re-released too, which fantastic got a re-release within the last couple years because I really wanted that game back then. That's also on my hidden gem list I'll talk about later, but that game has gotten so expensive on actual hardware. It's nuts. I think the complete copy, like I saw it years ago for like $200. Like, oh geez, I don't have the money for that. Now it's like $800 or something nonsense. Yeah. It's really nuts.
I recently saw it on like a short on YouTube or something, and I'd never heard of it back then. And I was like, what the heck? I mean, it looks awesome to play, but I'm just like, wow, the price.
Yeah, it's up there. It's unfortunate, but it's one that he mentioned that one on there too. So there's a not a remaster, but it's a re-release by Limited Run. They published it. I think it's like $20-$25. If you're really interested, it's worth it, right? It's just digital copy. I'm sure it's going to go on sale for dirt cheap at some point. Nick sent us a little bit of a nostalgic memory, even though he says like he only has limited memories. He says, my only memories of the GBA are my mom got it for me for Christmas back in 2001. I remember playing Breath of Fire on trips to my grandparents' house in Wisconsin. It was about a house car ride each direction. So it's like, or an hour car ride each direction, which so great. Like he got to chip away at Breath of Fire and maybe like a few weekends he could beat it.
And if that was 2001, that was the original. So
yeah,
he was getting the authentic Game Boy experience where you can't play it on a night car trip.
Yeah, unless you have one of those worm lights or one of a million other lights that may or may not have worked very well. He said the only games I ever had for it were Breath of Fire 1, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, and Wario Land 4. I ended up trading it to EB Games along with my SNES and all of my SNES games to get some PS2 games.
Oh, no.
I know, that's a pain all of us know in some way, Nick. Yeah. You understand, yeah. So thank you both for sending a little notes to us. It's always fun when you hear things from people, whether it's like their memories or game lists or anything else. It's always great to hear experiences that are different from ours because Deuce and I, like, we've known each other for like 34, 35 years now. So it's like we remember most of our experiences because we experienced them together.
Yeah.
But so it's always fun when we hear someone else's relative's perspective, like, Nick with his GB and Breath of Fire going to grandma's house. Pretty cool.
Yeah. For me, it was like a Game Boy game, an original Game Boy
game.
Super Mario Land.
Or Game Gear.
Going to grandma's house.
Yeah. All right, so we're really going to cover sort of the history of the Game Boy Advance, its release, sort of its impact on things, and also we're going to, like I said, we're going to mention some of our favorite series and games and some hidden gems. I also want to talk about some of the peripherals and kind of the oddities that I also had. So it'll be a fun episode because it's really, I don't want to be too comprehensive, but it's more just like looking at the GBA for how awesome it was. And I know people don't forget about it, but I think sometimes it's easy to forget the history of it and like how the Game Boy was way before the GBA took hold of things. Yeah. So the original Game Boy, Deucey, I'm sure you remember this, launched back in July 1989 in the US. Like I said, we covered our favorite games that were on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color because those are really similar in hardware. Like there's not many major differences. The Game Boy itself sold a total of 118 million units, so that's definitely one of the highest selling consoles ever, even today.
Yep.
I think the Switch 1 just, I don't know if it bested the PS2, but it's really just like it's like the Game Boy, DS, PS2, and the Wii and Switch. Those are probably like the most selling consoles of all time across everything.
And most of those are Nintendo. It's crazy.
I know, it's pretty nuts, right? Yeah. As much as the vocal minority online complains about Nintendo not doing like, not having like the most newest hardware, most powerful hardware, they seem to be doing pretty well, and they also seem to be knowing what they're doing.
Yeah. Every time somebody's like, oh, they fumbled the Virtual Boy, the N64, they even fumbled the GameCube supposedly, and then it's like, look at all these sales.
Exactly. Right? They can afford a few fumbles. Yeah. It's going to be a full hit, So I remember even back then, because of the Game Gear, that people were clamoring for a color Game Boy in the mid 90s. And I remember that was the big thing, even for my parents. And my dad didn't buy me a Game Boy because he's like, this is not in color. Why would I get this? Like, it just looks bad, Plus, it's like, I'm sure that was his way of saying like, there's no way in hell I'm going to buy you another system. When you have a Game Gear, your brother has a Game Gear, and you got all these games that we're renting and buying from the store,
Even though at the time that Game Boy was probably the least expensive.
It probably was. Yeah, it definitely was. Because I think the Game Boy was probably like $80 at most. And then I'm sure I could find them cheap, but by then, like, we had the Game Gear, and that was our portable system. All 6 batteries that would drain every single day.
Yeah.
So, Nintendo was really sort of against it for a long time. They really thought that technology wouldn't meet their demands as far as like what it needed to power the thing, to for a backlight to run, for a colored screen. Those are all factors that were kind of, the waters were tested with like the Lynx and Game Gear, and we all know how that went, where they did look gorgeous. They looked amazing because they had a backlit screen, and the screen and their graphics were probably Nintendo level, Master System level. I'd say the Lynx even better. Like, it's probably one step below 16-bit system. But the problem with those is that they were really expensive.
Was the Nomad out by then?
The Nomad was 97 or so, somewhere around there. Okay. Yeah, it was pretty late, 96, I think. And it just wasn't something Nintendo was going to do, because they realized that, like, if it takes 6 batteries for a Game Gear, and you have like 4 to 6 hours at most, depending on the game, that's going to kill a lot of things. When the Game Boy itself has 4 AA batteries, and it had like 16 hours of battery life.
And even on top of that, they had really good battery packs that you could buy separately and then recharge. I had one. I don't think we ever really used batteries for my Game Boy, because I had that little side battery pack that could plug in. And then when I got the Game Boy Color, even though that went down to 2 batteries for a whole color screen, I still got another battery pack for that could be recharged.
Yeah, those battery packs were essential.
Yeah,
when I was a kid, because for one, it saved our parents money. They weren't buying batteries all the time, even with the Costco packs.
Yeah,
but like the Game Gear, I had the one that would screw onto the back, and that thing was essential for anything. And also, it helped that while it was charging, you just plug it in with the AC adapter, right, and play it that way, right? So that was the big thing. But still, when you get down to it, like, it's still 6 AA batteries for almost no playtime, really, comparatively to the Game Boy. So the Game Boy, instead of releasing a new colored system, they ended up releasing a colored system in the mid 90s, like 95, where Nintendo re-released the Game Boy. It was really just the same system, but they had it as part of their Play It Loud campaign, which I know you remember, Deucy. That was all over Nintendo Power and commercials. Like, at the end of commercials, it would say "Play It Loud." It was like the equivalent of Sega's "Welcome to the Next Level." Right, their sort of slogan for that.
It was even equivalent to their, like, when they would just yell Sega at you.
Exactly. Yeah. So the initial revision, they had a red, yellow, green, blue, black, white, and a clear Game Boy. And again, those are like the stock Game Boy, like the old fatties, as we'll call them.
And also like the weird green colored screens.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the other thing. That weird, like, light green, almost like puke green or something. Skin green. Yeah. And then after that, in 96, they released the Game Boy Pocket, which was a slimmer system that only needed 2 batteries instead of 4. And also had a much better LCD screen that was actually black and white, and also had a better response time. So that's one thing I noticed with the Game Boy Pocket. I forgot who we knew that owned it, but I remember playing it at someone's house.
One of my friends that lived up the street from me had
Okay, that's right. Do you have a silver one or something?
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that.
Because I remember it lived up to its name. It could fit in any pocket. It was great. And I didn't want one. I wasn't pressuring my parents for one. But when I played that one, I was like, wow, you can really see this better. Like, the screen, the black and white was
was really crisp.
Yeah.
I remember that a lot. Like, it was really crisp, and it just looked bright for black and white.
Yeah, you didn't need a light as often, like a separate light as often, because it popped.
Yeah. So again, like, this is like 7 years later. So of course, technology changes, and that's when Nintendo sort of took its next baby steps in the next hardware revision, which I think about now. Like, it's funny when people are, somewhat understandably upset when there's like a new hardware revision, like there's an OLED Switch, OLED Steam Deck, PS5 Pro, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, whatever. And Nintendo had been doing this in the 90s, right? And like, even Sega did the same thing, but it's like they did like a slight hardware revision. Like, the Game Boy Pocket, for all intents and purposes, is really just the same system, but it's more streamlined. Like, it takes less batteries, it probably uses less power. Actually, I think it has less battery life in general too, which is expected, but it's not significant. Like, you're going from 16 hours to 3. It's still more like 8 to 10 or something like that. So that was sort of their concession in the meantime. And at this point too, you have to consider that the Game Gear existed. It's kind of dying off. The portable gaming space is really dominated by Game Boy and Game Boy Pocket more than anything else. So that's also why I think Nintendo was comfortable with not releasing a new system, because it's like, well, we're coasting through this.
It's also weird how, for that day and age, like, just having a different colored outer shell really extended sales life.
It did. Well, because it's cool. It's like, now I texted you the other day when I was getting so salty that analog suddenly has like all these color variants of the analog 3D. I'm like, where were these a year ago when they were making them so scarce to pre-order? You and I were like, all right, we gotta be up at like 8 a.m. to make sure we can pre-order, not lose it. Now they're like releasing new colors every single week.
Yeah, I was up, I could have sworn around the same time as the pre-order started, and the black ones were already sold out.
Yeah.
Like, so luckily I got a white one, but it was like, what the heck? And now there's just like, oh, and by the way, here's color.
Yeah. So it goes back to exactly what you said, where it's like all it takes is like different color hardware that looks awesome for some reason that you respond to. And you're like, damn it, like I want that, right? So I'd say the next hardware revision that Nintendo set out is pretty significant. It was the Game Boy Color. This was released November 1988. This is when I got a Game Boy formally, because the Game Boy before this, like I mentioned before in that Game Boy episode, like, a family friend had given it to us because they found it in a rental car because my parents didn't want to buy me one. So this was the first Game Boy system that actually went out for, and I got this for my birthday the following year. But the Game Boy Color was released in November 1998. It had much improved hardware with a faster CPU, and I think it had more like video RAM too on top of it. So it wasn't like a significant upgrade, but it was still an upgrade from the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket. And also with this was a colored screen that was supporting like color exclusive games. So those also looked significantly better than the standard Game Boy games. They played better. This was also fully backwards compatible with all Game Boy games, which is great. And also had a color palette option. Where I remember you could hold certain button combos as it starts up, and it paints the non-color game into like a different color palette.
Yeah, it kind of made it look like when you put a game into the Super Game Boy.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Yeah, it wasn't like the Super Game Boy where it's like certain games like had a signature palette.
Yeah,
but this did the same effect. I think it was the same thing on Super Game Boy. Didn't you hold a button combo the same way?
It was like L or R. It brought up a little menu.
That's right,
around the edge of the screen.
Yeah. So the only other sort of portable systems that were competing with the Game Boy when the Game Boy Color released were systems that I was aware of at the time, but also never saw for sale and just weren't really sort of anywhere I shopped. They were really hard to find. It was the WonderSwan, which that was only in Japan. It's a really cool portable system made by Bandai. This had lifetime sales of only 3.5 million. So I'm really giving you sales numbers to give you perspective on the difference.
Lifetime.
Yeah, lifetime sales. The difference in total sales of the Game Boy versus literally everything else. Everything else combined still does not come close. So the WonderSwan sold lifetime 3.5 million. This system I did have the Neo Geo Pocket, and there's a Neo Geo Pocket Color that I got through online trading, but we couldn't find games for it, unfortunately. It was really like a Game Boy version of the Neo Geo. So it had like these miniaturized versions of Neo Geo games, like the King of Fighters, and there was like an SNK versus Capcom game that was really cool. There was a lot of just bite-sized Neo Geo games, but again, like no one really knew this existed back then. Like
it had full color too, didn't it?
There was a system that had full color.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And this only sold about 1 million lifetime sales.
Damn.
So the only really competition, if you can call that, was the Game Gear. It sold around 12 million total, and it was discontinued by 97. So by the time the Game Boy Color came out, like Game Gear wasn't a thing anymore. And then there was also the Sega Nomad, which came out, I think it was like 96, 97. And I don't know how many that total sold. Oh no, that sold about 1 million. Excuse me. And the Neo Geo Pocket sold 2 million. So the Sega Nomad and the Game Gear, 13 million total, which again is like not even a dent in the 118 million sold for the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. So the Game Boy Advance, do you remember this being like a rumor thing? Do you see back in the day, like when it was sort of bubbling up? I think it was like in the early 2000s, like late 99, early 2000 when they were talking about the GBA to begin with.
No, it's weird. I don't remember the talk about it because I think I was just still focused on N64 and a little bit on the Game Boy Color. I was like, oh, well, we got the Game Boy Color. That's enough. And then it just sort of hit me all at once when Nintendo Power did their like exclusive issue on everything Game Boy Advance. And then I was like, oh, this is going to be legit. This is awesome. It's like a Super Nintendo in my hand.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was for me. Is my buddy Brandon and I at the time, we were really, really into games, obviously. And like we were just like biting on any bit of news we could, whether it was online or through magazines. So this was in that same instance as you, where it's like I didn't really know too much about the Game Boy Advance even coming until like EGM and all the magazines started doing cover stories for it. And it was actually crazy that this started in the early 90s. It was called Project Atlantis, but Nintendo wasn't happy with how the hardware was at the time. Like as far as, like I said, they didn't feel like the portable technology was at a point that they felt like it was effective or what they wanted to do with the system. So they set it aside for, like 5 or 6 years. And it wasn't until like 99 when they formally announced it at, I think it was like Space World, or I forgot what show it was. And then that's probably when the news was starting to trickle out. I think it was like probably late 2000 when I started seeing it in magazines. And at that point, we were just like at fever pitch because, like you said, it was a portable Super Nintendo and it looked like a Super Nintendo.
I think, though, for me, what was also on the horizon was talk more of GameCube. And what was that codename? Project Dolphin?
Dolphin.
Yeah. So everybody was talking about Project Dolphin and how silly the name was, but this should be like Nintendo's like first foray into CDs and finally stepping up to PlayStation and stuff like that. And oh, by the way, let's upgrade the Game Boy while we're at it.
Yeah. And I think one big reason why I love the GBA so much, before we get into like everything else about it, it's like, it is pretty interesting that of the time, like you said, this was released in June 2001. And by then, like PS2 was out, GameCube was coming out, Xbox was coming out. Everything was 3D, like fully immersed in 3D. And 2D games were like, they're almost like secondary, even tertiary. Like they're just kind of there. They probably don't make a whole lot of money on the main consoles because everything's just like sort of advancing 3D. And GBA was sort of like the last major system that really emphasized sprite work, like, you know, like truly 2D games. And it did do some 3D stuff, and it was like sort of the same effect of the Super Nintendo, right, where it's like it had mode 7 kind of scaling, and some 3D was more effective than others, and it looked great. But to me, it was still like a primarily 2D system, but it really just tried to push forward what the 16-bit era did with better hardware. So I think that's why I have so much fondness for it, is because it has so many great games, and they're all rooted in like that 16-bit sensibility or sort of design, where it's like everything is meant to have like these really realized pixel graphics and like these design philosophies that fit like with a 16-bit game.
I think we wanted those types of games on our other consoles, but they were just so hell-bent on 3D.
Exactly.
And so for Game Boy Advance, it was like, oh, this is acceptable. We can put this on this system and let people have what they want, but in a handheld form.
Yeah, and maybe also it could be a factor too where many people weren't sold on portable game. Like it was kind of like, you know, it did look leagues behind modern consoles, right? I think now their disparity is less because you have like the Switch and all these other systems. And even the DS still didn't look as great as like a PS2 or anything like that. But, you know, a 2D sprite-based system compared to like a console that we have at the time, people may have just not been caring about portable gaming as much either.
Well, the way they look, because they came out in multiple colors, the hardware itself, and they were smaller than the Game Boy Colors and everything, I think people might have started seeing them more as toys.
Yeah.
Which is what Nintendo always wanted to avoid way back on the NES. But like once you played it, people who knew. They were like, oh, finally, this is like a Super Nintendo. This is great for the modern day.
Yeah. So, and again, when it did launch, it was a huge deal. It launched in June 2001 for $99, which in 2026, it's pretty incredible to think of a brand new portable console for $99 when the Switch 2 itself was it $450, $500 or something like that?
Yeah.
Right. Granted, different hardware and everything, but it's still pretty interesting.
Now individual games are almost $99.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. So when it did launch, it did have multiple colors. There was indigo purple, glacier, which was like a see-through kind of blue. There was Arctic, there was black, fuchsia, like a pink color, and then Japan got an orange one, which I don't know. I remember this time, like, I don't know, Japan was hot on these orange consoles. Like they had the orange GameCube that came out at launch, right? I remember I got this at launch because it was right on my birthday. And I remember I got the glacier color. It was like a see-through blue that I really liked.
That's the one I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And my buddy got, I think he got I forgot if he got purple. I don't remember what it was, but this was like the first launch I think I might've been a part of, because everything before this was like, I didn't have money for it, but this was like something I had planned out. Cause it's like, look, I know it's coming around my birthday, save up whatever money I can to contribute. And you know, I remember going to Target with my buddy. We got, I got Castlevania Circle of the Moon with mine. He got Super Mario Advance with his. And that was like our thing, is like we eventually went to Blockbuster and rented, but that was like, you know, we made sure to kind of get these games we wanted to cover for launch or anything like that. And that's like my first sort of significant launch time for me, was being a part of the GBA launch. Reviews at the time were really solid. I think a lot of them were actually really sort of high marks as well. A lot of the common criticisms were fair, though. I think this is some of the biggest faults, just hardware wise, and it's also, I suspect that they didn't have a backlight or anything like that because it probably just made the system more expensive. But there's a lot of criticism,
and the battery life,
battery life too. Yeah. But there's a lot of criticism at the time because it was really hard to see some games. Like Circle of the Moon is a great example where if you didn't have proper lighting, that game is very dark to begin with, and I don't know, something about the GBA screen, like it wasn't properly. It was reflecting light really weird too. So it was really hard to get a good position on something that wasn't causing glare at the same time.
Yeah, even if you had a portable light that hooked onto it, it would just glare something fierce. And you've got this bright dot in your face.
And it was really annoying to deal with. And some games are better than others because some games seem to be designed with heightened brightness just by nature, so you can actually see a thing to whatever extent you could with whatever accessory or, you know, whatever light you had.
Yeah, they were lucky that they were known for Mario games because all the Mario ones they ported over.
They're vibrant.
Yeah. Tons of color.
Yeah. So the system did really well. It sold 500,000 in its first week in the US, and now it's considered the fastest selling console of the time. So I think that's also, again, has a lot to do with the fact that it was $100. I'm pretty sure the PS2 was $200 when it launched. Still probably was around this time. And again, this is pre-GameCube, pre-Xbox, and those are both $2 to $250, I want to say, when they launched. So $100 for a portable Super Nintendo, and the games are, 20 to 40, I think, 20 to 35. It makes sense why it sold so well. Plus, you also have all those people who bought a Game Boy who are probably just beyond hyped to get this as well.
Yeah, I think parents were a little more accepting of this because they could get it for their kids and then not have to get a new game. Like the kids could play whatever they already had before.
That's true because it's all backwards compatible with all your games.
This was like probably the first time, other than Game Boy Color, like this was the first time that they had a generational leap and was actually backwards compatible for Nintendo.
Yeah, actually that's a good point. I'm even thinking about that because everything else has been locked to its system.
Yeah.
And really the Game Boy Color, which again, same hardware, but that was backwards compatible with regular Game Boy games. But you're right, this is like the next step in their hardware. And it was 100% backwards compatible. I'll attribute that to Sony because, with the PS2, that's also why it sold so well. It had a DVD player and it worked with the insane amount of games you had on PS1 already on top of all that. And Sega started way back, but it wasn't like a thing. That's what I think is interesting. Like when you remember when we talked about the Genesis where they had the Master System converter, a power-based converter where you could play Master System on your Genesis, but no, I knew how to Master System, right? So it's like, it was great that was an option. And I really think it was until PS2 when that really made it a thing where it's like now consoles by nature, they're released with backwards compatibility because it's like, why you don't have to sell all your games to get a new system. Like you could totally get a new system and, play everything you own. And the GBA was amazing for that because now I could still borrow your games, Deucy, because I didn't have any Game Boy games.
Yeah.
And play them on a better screen,
And then Nintendo still was shooting themselves in the foot because GameCube comes out and that's a whole disc thing.
Yeah.
And they couldn't backwards compatible with any of their other consoles.
That'd be funny if like the GameCube did have like an N64 slot or something. That would have been hilarious. Like a Sega CDX or something. Yeah. So the launch lineup had 16 games. I won't go through all of them, but some of the highlights were Army Man Advance, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Choo Choo Rocket, which significant because again, by this time, that's a Sega game. So Sega was sort of like exiting the console business by 2002. And this is at a point where it's kind of weird that they're porting their games to Nintendo systems. So Choo Choo Rocket, great puzzle game that was on the Dreamcast. This is like a downsized version of that. I only call that out because of that significance that it's a Sega game on a Game Boy Advance. Earthworm Jim, Fire Pro Wrestling, Iridium 3D, which was like this cool 3D looking shoot 'em up. Pitfall, The Mayan Adventure, which it's that 16-bit version from the mid-90s, and they ported it on here for some reason. Really bizarre. Konami Crazy Racers, which is just a Mario Kart Konami clone with Konami characters, including Ninja from Metal Gear, and I think Dracula's in there as well from Castlevania. Rayman Advance, Raider Rumble Boxing Round 2, Super Dodgeball Advance, Super Mario Advance, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Is that Super Dodgeball the dodgeball from Nintendo?
No, it's well, I think it's the same series, but it's like a new game.
Yeah, an updated one.
Yeah. I remember renting that one. It was actually a pretty cool game.
I did not realize they kept that series going.
Yeah, I don't know if anything came out after that. I feel like that might have been like one of the last stands of Super Dodgeball. Yeah. But had you played any of these, Deucy? Because for me, like obviously, I mentioned Castlevania Circle of the Moon, which was really the reason I got a GBA more than anything. On top of everything else they offered. But, I played like Super Mario Advance. I did rent Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which was really interesting because it was that isometric view. So it's like it had these sort of like pseudo 3D models that look like Donkey Kong Country.
I've heard a lot of good things about this one because they're like, you wouldn't expect any Tony Hawk game to be good portable, but this one,
it works
because they didn't try to do like 3D. It's awesome on there.
It is, and it works because again, it's limited to 4 buttons. So you have like L and R, which are like your turn, and then A and B, which is basically ollie and trick. Super fun game for what it is.
Yeah,
though. Like it's not anything close to like the PS1, Dreamcast, or console ports, obviously, but way better than you'd expect.
It's very good for quick plays on car trips and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was trying to think when you mentioned that this came out around your birthday and you were part of the launch. I once again was not part of the launch. I think I didn't get this until Mario Kart was already out. And I think Mario Kart was my first game for the system.
I could see that game selling you on the GBA more than anything. If there's anything that pushed you over the cliff, it might have been that.
When I saw like ads for it in magazines and Nintendo Power covering it, I was like, it's the next Mario Kart. I need the next Mario Kart. I think I got it for my birthday maybe the next year or something like that. But out of all these launch games, still to this day, I think I've only played Mario Advance.
Wow.
Oh, no, I finally played Castlevania Circle of the Moon.
Oh, that's right, in the collection.
In the collections.
Yeah.
But yeah, up until then, it was only Mario Advance, which is Mario 2.
Yeah. I'd say, this launch list, like, it's pretty, it has a lot of variety, I would say. And I think that's one of the key things that we talked about in our launch games episode way back was how console makers were eventually kind of realizing, like, we need more than like a couple of games now. Like, the games kind of changed, literally.
Right before this was Nintendo 64 with two games.
With two launch games, exactly, right? So it's a different story when you have a new portable system and there's 16 pretty different games. Like, some are cool ports, like there's Earthworm Jim, which is a port of the the Super Nintendo version. There's Pitfall, which I'm sure there's an audience somewhere out there who really enjoys that. Like, I think I have it because we got it used somewhere.
And even things like modern things like Ready to Rumble.
Yeah,
you wouldn't expect that, but that was awesome.
yeah, and again, like it was cool because this did have 3D. It was very limited, but it was effective enough. Like, there was even a Tekken port on here that looked pretty damn good for what it was. So that was sort of the launch instance, and then by the end of 2010, which is really when the Game Boy Advance was discontinued, they ended up having somewhere between like 1,500 and 1,700 games, which is a pretty massive library because I think even PS1 had like 1,500 in the US or something like that alone. So it's pretty massive. I think from the counts I've seen, there's somewhere between 800 and 1,000 in the US alone. And again, it's just like, great, there's 1,000 games. I don't know how many of those are actually greats, but there was a point in the GBA where it's like they're releasing everything. Like the schlocky shovelware stuff was becoming a thing.
Yeah, that was the new thing. Like, Nintendo used to be known for their seal of quality, that little gold stamp. And then Game Boy Advance came out and you just had everything.
Everything was getting ported, ugly games, a lot of movie-based games.
It's great to see like YouTube channels that do schlocky games, and a lot of them are Game Boy Advance now.
Yeah, I have to assume that it was just cheap to develop on the Game Boy Advance, probably pretty easy. So a lot of companies were like, just crapping on these games because it was easy to make, cheap to make, and they could sell it for cheap, $20 to $30, probably make a profit because parents are buying whatever for their kids, like, oh, this the Mummy Advance or something like that, whatever it is.
Freaking Mary-Kate and Ashley.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, 27 times.
Or the next Barbie game, or what was the one I saw? Oh, there was like a Bratz dolls game.
Oh, I remember seeing that. Yeah, that was the thing. I worked at Circuit City, and I remember seeing copies of that there because we had a lot of backstock, like always. I remember that was like one of the games because that was also a thing at the time.
But like you said, this started to die down, or by the end of it was in 2010, which means it saw multiple generations of big consoles, including like the next generation of 360 and PS3. And so I always thought it was interesting, like the reason we have a hidden gems section is because they would have modern games for PS3, 360, PS2, whatever, and then all of a sudden there's like a Game Boy Advance version, and you were like, what the heck? But it was so different, and they played to Game Boy's strengths that it was probably also a good version.
Usually they were. I mean, there's a few. I mean, it's not always going to be true, but yeah, there's some games where you're like really shocked that it was at least that late in the Game Boy's life or Game Boy Advance's lifespan, because you also consider the DS was out 2004, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So it was already competing with that 3 years after release, which is pretty crazy when you consider the Game Boy Advance took 12 years to come out after the Game Boy. And within 3 or 4 years, Nintendo has a DS, which plays Game Boy Advance games. And then by 2011 is when the 3DS came out, and that's when the Game Boy Advance finally died. So this system was sort of like the little system that could, because it just, it released, it kind of made a big splash and persisted throughout time. I think it ended up selling like 80 million units when it was all said and done. There's also a couple of variants of the system that were released that were improved. There was a backlit version that was released in 2003 as the Game Boy Advance SP. This was the clamshell version, so it was much more slimmer, which I liked and didn't like because my hands are big, so it kind of sucks when it's even slimmer.
Yeah, the L and R buttons are tiny.
Super hard, yeah. But it did have a rechargeable battery, and the early versions, and I say the early versions, meaning the first version of the SP had a frontlit screen. There was a little button on there you could hit.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I think that's the one my dad has.
I think so, because that was the earliest one. I have the Nintendo version of that, like the Nintendo Classic one. I'm pretty sure that's the frontlit version. And it was great because it wasn't the most optimal experience to play, but it lit your screen up just enough to where you could see what you're playing without the need of another light, or like a warm light accessory or anything like that. And then there was another version that came out, the GBA Micro. I remember seeing these when I worked at Circuit City, where
I've only seen that recently at a shop we went to.
It's such a great novelty, but it's so dumb.
Oh, it is so insane. I mean, I don't have that big of hands that I consider, and it is too tiny for me.
It's literally, it's like the quarter of it's probably like the size of a Game Boy Pocket, like a quarter size of that. It's super small. You could probably fit it in your back pocket. You could fit it like on a keychain probably.
You could fit it in the little coin pocket of a jeans. Like,
yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It's crazy. And I don't think it was I want to say I don't know if it was backlit. I want to say it wasn't, or frontlit or anything. But it was super small. Like it barely fit in your hands.
It's barely bigger than the cart itself.
It is
that it'll play.
Yeah, exactly. I think the cart actually sticks out more than the system does. Yeah, and on top of that, it's not backwards compatible with Game Boy and Game Boy Color. So that's sort of the concession, because they had they also had to cut some of the hardware out to fit this thing.
Yeah,
and it's really just like a tiny Game Boy Advance. And then the more improved version of the SP came out in 2005 as well. This one, it's the AGS 101, and this was backlit. And this also has a toggle for different levels of brightness. So I think this one, it's obviously a little more hard to find nowadays because it's more expensive. It was released later. But these are the ones that are more sought after because they're fully backlit and they look the best out of the other systems. I also think it has a newer screen on there too. I can't recall.
Nice.
So,
And the great thing about these, like starting with the frontlit one, is like you said, they're all rechargeable batteries. You don't have any slots for Duracells or anything like
exactly.
that. So
yeah.
no matter the power of the screen, you're going to have good battery life, and you can just plug it in anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, these are really great versions of the system. Like, nowadays you probably wouldn't buy like the original Game Boy Advance because it's not backlit. You don't want to go out seeking like worm lights and all that crap either, because there was a whole... God, I remember like trying to find the proper light. Like my buddy and I would look at magazine reviews and online reviews to see what was the best lights, because they all had different levels of glare. They all had different brightness levels. And it was just so annoying to have to deal with that. And like you go to Electronics Boutique, there's like, I swear, like 15 different lights you could buy for the Game Boy Advance. Some that were like the worm light where you could adjust it. Some fit over the screen.
I had the worm one. It spiraled, and it gave off the least amount of glare because the light itself was a small circle.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, it was just a bright white dot in my eye instead of like a overwashing glare.
Yeah.
But I also like that one because it still kept a port on tops for like multi-taps and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know about that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
like
because
the system link cables and everything.
Yeah, because you had to plug it into that port where the system link would go, but then on top of that,
think about that.
It still had a space for that.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the best. See, that's probably got a good review in EGM back then. Where it's like, buy this thing. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Deucy. So I guess now we can get into some games and hidden gems here, because we put our own little list. Like I said, it's pretty informal, because I guess we could have done like a top 10 or anything like that, but this is a little bit more broad because
I don't think I could have, because I forgot a lot of these, and like I put some on here that are like full series, and then I put some on here that were just single games out of a series, but like I don't know if I could rank them. Like,
well, plus there's like a lot, and like we kind of broadly say like we're covering like series and games because the Game Boy Advance had like a lot of different series together. Like we'll talk about Mario Advance and Castlevania or something like that, but it just had so much to offer, and yeah, it's really hard to nail down just 10. So we have like a lot here. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but there's going to be like a lot of, plus we have some overlap too, which is always kind of nice because Deucy and I are on the same wavelength sometimes. So it helps. But Deucy, which ones you want to kind of tap through first for the notable series and favorites here?
I think the first one you have to go with is probably why a lot of people got a Game Boy Advance, and that's because all the classic Marios were going to be portable now. They called it the Mario Advance series, and they numbered them weird. But like Mario Advance was the original Mario 2 from NES, but the US version. And then Mario Advance 2 was what? Super Mario World.
Was it Mario World or Mario 3?
No, it was Mario World.
Mario World, and then it was Advance 2 was 3?
No, Advance 3. Advance 3 was Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island.
There you go.
And then Advance 4 finally was Mario 3.
So they went like, they kind of sandwiched the two NES ones with the Super Nintendo ones. Yeah.
Because they knew everybody wanted Mario 3. And they would probably stop buying if you got that. So they were like, no, we're going to dangle this out there. But what they did was they upgraded all of them to be sort of similar. Like they used the graphics for the Nintendo versions. They used the graphics from Super Mario All-Stars when they updated those. And then they weirdly like added voice work into them.
I remember that.
They also added a lot of extra collectibles and things, so it wasn't just a straight port. There were some extra bonuses to playing this.
There was also, wasn't there multiplayer of some sort too? I remember if you had a link cable, you could do some modes or something.
You could do, on every one, you could do the original Mario Brothers game where you're, bashing enemies from below and they're coming out of the pipes and everything like that. And yeah, weirdly, every version had that.
Yeah, and again, like these were significant because again, it was a portable Mario that was way different than the Game Boy ones. Even like, as good as like Warrior Land 1 and 2 were, they weren't like these, like the Super Nintendo versions necessarily. And I remember playing through most of these because you bought most of them, I think.
I have them all. Yep.
You have them all, right? Yeah, because I remember buying the first one. I eventually got Mario Advance 2, which is Mario World, because again, like, how awesome was it to have these portable versions on here? And they looked really, really nice. And also they had those extras, like you mentioned, where they kind of like added more replay value to the game, even though most of us probably played through these games so many times back then, especially. So yeah, those I feel like
Mario World didn't need that much extra stuff. That thing was already a huge game.
I know, with 96 levels.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah. But it also, at that point too, it helped me rediscover how much I did enjoy Mario 2 on the NES, because my brother played the hell out of Mario Advance. And that was like probably the one I played the most on All-Stars, because it's the one I had least familiarity with.
Oh yeah.
Right. But it also just looked great in the GBA too. And I'd say it's like, it's interesting that like the GameCube had no Mario launch game, but the Game Boy Advance had one, and it was like an old Mario game.
It was an old one, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even a new one.
I don't think there was any real original Mario side-scroller.
I can't recall one.
No,
No, it was old ports or different spin-offs of his own series.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Series for me that I have to call out right away, because it's impossible not to, is the Castlevania trilogy.
It was your launch game.
It was my launch game. It was Circle of the Moon, June 2001. This one was really difficult. I remember that. This is also probably the most traditional of these sets, where it's like it still feels like a 2D, or not 2D, they're all 2D, but it feels like a Super Nintendo NES Castlevania, but it's a Metroidvania still, but it feels like it still has the stiffness of like those old games.
Yeah, the jumping was stiff. It was all whip based.
It was all whip based.
Yeah.
And you had a card system where they're based on, I think, is it Roman gods? I think. Yeah. And you can combine them to discover new abilities, new enhancements and buffs and everything like that, which is really cool. But it also sucked having to find these cards from random enemies.
Weren't they random?
They were randomized.
Yeah.
Also, the bosses in this game are freaking hard.
Yep.
I remember I got stuck at the final Dracula. I remember like my buddy and I went to go see Matrix, was the second one, Reloaded. And this is a time when like, you have to sell at the theater.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We're sitting there for hours. I remember I was like chipping away at the rest of this game in like summer 2002. I remember I got to the final boss, and also I couldn't see crap in the theater once we got to sit down.
Yep.
But this game is freaking hard. It's by far the hardest Castlevania, I think, of the portable ones, for me at least.
I noticed when I played it on the collection finally that it was just, I mean, it was very atmospheric, which good on them.
Yeah.
It was like Symphony of the Night, but darker even. Mm-hmm. The problem is you're playing it on a dark console at launch. Like, it was really rough to see. And then my first ever one that I played out of this trilogy was Aria of Sorrow.
Yeah, that's my favorite of the trilogy, because they had a Harmony of Dissonance, which was in 2002, and this one was still sort of like a I think this is when the art style was the strongest, because it was like Symphony of the Night. By Aria of Sorrow, they did like sort of like that pseudo anime aesthetic, which they really leaned in on the DS one,
and it was brighter. So I played it. I know I played it on my original GBA, and I could see it. Luckily,
yeah. Well, they knew then, because that's the thing. Like, I remember one of the criticisms during the review of Circle of the Moon was it's dark.
Yeah.
So they made a huge effort to make it bright. Like, you could tell right away when you play. Like, it's just there's a lot of bright colors.
Your character is wearing like a white coat, light blue pants, and has white hair.
Yes.
You can't miss him.
And I think he has like really white skin, and there's some red like on his lapel. He's very noticeable compared to I forgot what the character's name in Circle of the Moon
was. Circle of the Moon, he was wearing like dark brown. He was blending in with the walls.
There was less contrast in the first game for sure. And then Aria of Sorrow, because Harmony of Dissonance was great. It was sort of like a proper advancement of what Circle of the Moon did. The main gimmick with Harmony of Dissonance was it had sort of this dual layer castle. So it's like something might affect the front castle when you do like a puzzle or something. It might affect the back castle. I think it was like A and B versions or something like that. But Aria of Sorrow is by far the best one for me, because this is when they introduced the soul system, and this is really where I think they advanced the Symphony of the Night formula, where there's way more weapons. And now you collect souls, which
way more pickups, items and weapons.
Yeah, and you could also. I think there's multiple endings based on how many souls you have, or whatever certain souls you have to collect, I think.
You had to have a specific 3 to get like the true final boss or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. Which was fun to discover on its own. And also part of the fun as well was obviously just collecting these souls. Like each one had a different ability or different buff. It's sort of like the card system, but exploded. Like there's, now you can combine different souls, have different loadouts.
It also kind of reminded me of Pokemon, because like some souls were more rare than others.
That's very true.
And you wanted to like complete your whole soul decks.
That's exactly what happened. I ended up 100%ing that. Like I remember there was one soul that was extremely rare, and I was like going back and forth between screens. It's so stupid, but my save file's still there. Still have 100% souls. It only took like 18 hours or something dumb. Next one you want to go through, Deucey?
We've talked about both of them before on old episodes, but the Metroid games that came out for Game Boy Advance.
Oh yeah, I put these on my list too for the same reason.
Totally original. They weren't like ports of anything. They were continuations or remakes. Fusion and Zero Mission were just great. It was like this is what GBA was meant for. Was like a continuation of side-scrolling classic games that we knew, series that we knew, and it was perfect for the Metroid series.
Yeah, those are two standouts on the system for sure. Both because both of them are just incredible games to begin with, but they also are like some of the most gorgeous on the GBA too. Like one of the things I feel like I always have this kind of stupid stuff, even though it's irrelevant. But it's like my thing with Dread was just sort of the lack of variety in some of the biomes, and Zero Mission and Fusion both don't have that issue where it sort of understood the assignment and the advancement of Super Metroid and expanded those things to the GBA, where everything's sort of, there's each area has its own distinct sort of vibe and enemies to it. Like, this feels like it's a different planet, like you're visiting.
It was easy for them because Zero Mission is the first game which already had those different biomes. That was what everybody talked about when they talked about Metroid. And then Fusion, I mean, they did it on purpose. They were like, here's a bunch of numbered sectors, and they are definitely going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, everything was so bright. Fusion was another one that I played on my original GBA, and I could see it just fine on car trips or whatever.
Well, it makes sense because the SP wouldn't have been out by the time I think both of these came out. I don't know. I forgot what year Zero Mission was out, but I don't think it was out after 2003, was it? Maybe it was.
04, I think.
04. Okay, so maybe you did have like an SP or something like that by then. But Fusion definitely not. So that's always a good hallmark when you can see it on a dark GBA screen. Yeah.
Yep. When you can see it in general.
Yeah. Next games I wanted to talk about were the two Zelda games, pretty significant, Link to the Past and Four Swords. And there's also the Minish Cap, which is an original Zelda adventure that was really cool, where you wear this cap and it's sort of a character itself. It's like
isn't it like a bird?
It's like a bird with a beak.
Yeah.
And when you wear the cap, you can transform into Minish size, which basically means like sort of like an elf, like a tiny, tiny elf. And it has a lot of puzzles that revolve around that. This takes the same Zelda form you've seen a million times before, but again, it uses the GBA to its greatest extent with the scaling and all the different graphical effects.
Is Minish Cap out on the Switch Online?
I think it is now. I'm going to say it is.
I kind of forgot about that one, and it sounds really fun to play.
It's really good. I got stuck at the final boss, unfortunately. I do remember that. He was pretty hard.
This version of Link to the Past, this port, is the first time I ever beat Link to the Past.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I think that would have been the case for me too. No, I did beat Super Nintendo once. That's right. I remember because my buddy got me through one of the last dungeons. But yeah, the Link to the Past port was, again, huge deal because you have the Super Nintendo version. I didn't get to play the Four Swords adventure because this was cool where you could set up with a link cable. You could do 4-player co-op, which wasn't terribly common on the Game Boy. Like, there's only a few games that supported 4-player, I think, at the time.
And for this game, it was kind of necessary to have.
For Four Swords, at least, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely a more co-op-oriented adventure. And there's also the, tangentially to this, before we get back to Link to the Past, there was the Four Swords on GameCube. But this was, I was thinking about this too, like this is one of the cool innovations of the GBA and GameCube was the GBA link cable that linked to your GameCube, where now you can play Four Swords, the GameCube version, and like your GBA screen had like stats and some other stuff going on, or some parts where you'd play on the GBA screen.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, it's like, that's almost like a super primitive Wii U or Switch in a way, where, right? Where it's like you kind of have like your different stats on a second screen, or even like a primitive DS in some way.
It was what I'm surprised this didn't go into other controllers of the time. Like you said, Wii U had that one where the main pad was a different screen, and then they only made games that like only one player had that pad and the rest had regular controllers. Whereas with the Game Boy Advance, unfortunately, I never had the connector, and I never knew anybody else that did.
Me neither. Yeah,
but it would be awesome to have, like, I know they made another game, Crystal Chronicles Final Fantasy, on GameCube that required these connections. Could you imagine if you had like a Rainbow Six on GameCube?
Oh my God.
And then you did all your team planning on the Game Boy Advance.
I would love that on the Wii U. I probably would have bought a Wii U early if they had like a Rainbow Six with, the planning stages on on the bottom or anything like that. But yeah, it's one of those features where they were definitely forward thinking with it, but I don't know if a lot of developers knew what to do with it just yet. Like, I don't know what the deal was, but Nintendo tried it, and I think that's really cool that the GBA had that sort of mark on the GameCube in some way, because there was some interoperability between the two when you wouldn't expect it, because the Game Boy didn't really have anything like that. Like, you had the Game Boy, the Super Game Boy, and then there was a Game Boy player for the Game Boy Advance on there too that I never got the experience, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But it's really cool they they somehow tied the system and its functions to a bigger game on their main console. But the Link to the Past port for Game Boy Advance, I got this right away because I was such a big fan of Link to the Past, and it plays great. Is this on Game Boy on the Switch app? I think it is, right?
Yeah, this one's on there, which is weird because Link to the Past is on the Super Nintendo Switch, and I played them back to back. I forgot that the Game Boy Advance one gives Link a voice from like Ocarina.
Yes, I do remember that being a point at the time. Like he has his grunts and his
Hi-ya!
attacks. Yeah. I thought that was super cool that they added that to it. And that's the thing is like they're ports. I don't know if they're remakes. I don't know what they're considered technically, but it's like they look really great. Like I'm sure there's some concessions or some differences over the Super Nintendo ones.
Yeah,
but they're really effective.
I don't see too much different other than maybe there's a scaling difference. Like Link might be bigger or smaller.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never noticed. It doesn't feel like a remake or even a remaster until, what was it, on 3DS, they had that one actual remake of Link to the Past.
Well, which one?
Link Between Worlds.
Oh, was that? I guess that's considered a remake. It says, Link Between Worlds. Yeah, that one was really awesome too.
Yeah.
You could flat Link in a 2D character. Yeah. That'd be a fun thing to replay, actually. I haven't played that in probably like a decade.
I beat that one real quick.
Oh, you beat that one?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I got through like most of it. I didn't get to finish it. Yeah.
It's kind of more open world than A Link to the Past is.
It was. And I think that's probably where I fell off. Is like I didn't know where to go at some points. And I know it gives you more freedom because you kind of, it's almost like the original Zelda in the sense where you could like pick what weapons you go for and everything.
Go to any dungeon.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Game Boy.
Yeah. There you go, Deucy. Kick off the next one here that we're going to chat through a bit.
The next one was probably one of the first things that popped into my head when we started talking about Game Boy Advance, and that was the first Mario and Luigi RPG game.
Yeah, Superstar Saga.
Yeah, and like up to that point, we were always gushing about Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo and how they never had the chance for a sequel because Square went off to Sony, and then we got Paper Mario on the N64, which was pretty cool. But then this other one came out where they were like, okay, this is going to be an RPG, but now Luigi is finally involved.
And you control both at the same time.
Yes.
That's really the big thing.
That was the most fun innovation that I could think of for an RPG game, and it worked so well. Like the A button was all Mario and the B button was all Luigi.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do jumps together, you could do hammer attacks together. And even to this day, like the Brothership is still high on my playlist. It's just a fun series. And this was probably the most simplified that the series ever was. And so it's a real quick, fun playthrough for an RPG.
Yeah, it's a great bite-sized RPG, and it does a lot. Again, like I think one of the big things I always loved about GBA is like how many unique games it had. Like just sort of these. I always feel like the early 2000s is kind of like that point in gaming where it's not so consolidated like it is now, where there's after like the highest metrics, highest sales. A lot of developers were allowed to experiment and try new things. I think the GBA was like a great sort of experimentation pool, because this is sort of like the instance of that where, like you said, it takes what Mario RPG does with like the timed hits and like the more almost like quick time events in some senses, and it ramps those up. So now you have both Mario and Luigi, and they also have tandem attacks where I think involves 2 buttons as well. Mm-hmm. The writing in here is really funny. It's really kind of charming and humorous at the same time, right? It's really funny where I forgot what the main villain's name is. She's like some sort of witch.
Yeah. Oh man, Favela or
but some like
Fawful.
Fawful,
something like
maybe
that.
Fawful, yeah. So it's just.
Was it them that they always see Mario and then Green Mario?
Yes.
They never call Luigi by his name.
This is where Luigi's Clander was starting up. Yeah. Really great games. I played through most of Superstar Saga. I don't think I have the second, which I think is like some Brothers in Time or something like that.
Partners in Time. That was another good one. I had that on DS. That one, Mario and Luigi partner up with Baby Mario and Baby Luigi.
Yeah.
And because the DS has 4 buttons, now each one of them has a button A, B, X, and Y.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically the same as this one. Everybody had to team up on the overworld map and then could team up in the battles.
Yeah, so this one, it's just a really special RPG because I think that GBA has a lot of great RPGs, and this is another one where it's just such a great time. It's just, this is why you play games. It's just something that's whimsical, it's fun, it's kind of something you can chill out to, and really get some laughs out of it too. It's a really fun series.
This one passed a lot of time at my first job.
I'm sure it did. I remember that. Yeah. Keeping with RPGs and sort of the narrative of Square leaving, this is the weird instance where Square came back to Nintendo.
Yeah.
They released a whole bunch of Final Fantasy games. There was ports and sort of remakes of sorts, like Final Fantasy Origins, I think it was called, or Dawn of Origins, something like that, where it was like ports of Final Fantasy 1 and 2. And the ones I had to shout out were the ports of Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, and Tactics, because these are all just, again, gorgeous sprite-based games. I think they're technically remakes of the originals. They also have additions, like there's a new dungeon in each of the games. I think Final Fantasy 4 has 5 characters you can add to your party near the end of the game that weren't accessible in the original. Final Fantasy 5, I think this was the first instance, because there was a PS1 port, but this is one of the few first instances that we actually got to play it, because we skipped 5 entirely when we got it. Like, we got Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which were 4 and 6, and we got Final Fantasy 7. So it's really weird. We had this weird lapse in Final Fantasy games, and also Square was not in a good relationship with Nintendo because of the N64. So the GBA was the first time we started getting more Square games back, and they ported a ton of stuff. And the Final Fantasy games, all these ports, really stellar, really significant, and they're also just perfect for portability.
I didn't realize that they had ported over 5 and 6 at one point. I have 4 and Tactics, and Tactics isn't even really a port. I learned,
that's right. It's a new game. It's a fresh game. Yeah. I say ports of that one.
I learned recently that it was very different from the original, and the original is loved on PS1. But there is some love for the one on Game Boy Advance too. And yeah, PS4 was probably the first time I'd ever played that story, because I never played the FF2 on Super Nintendo. And man, the story of it is like one of my favorites of the old original Pixel.
It's great. It gets pretty dark later. It's really great. It's an old game, but it works so freaking well. And now it's worth revisiting, especially, well, now you have the Pixel remaster. But yeah, at the time for the GBA, these were just amazing games for $30 each.
Yep.
All right, Deucy, next one you want to chat about?
This one is the one I got first with my console, and I know I didn't rank it too high when we did the Mario Kart episode, but Mario Kart Super Circuit was a great like Game Boy Advance game. If you don't consider it as part of the whole Mario Kart series, it was good that we finally had a Mario Kart portable, and it was like a weird mashup of the only others that had been out at that time, Super Nintendo and N64. Like, the characters had voices and sort of sprite work of the N64, but all the tracks were very flat, like the old Super Nintendo games.
Yeah.
So much so that they brought over all of the original Super Nintendo tracks to unlock in that. But yeah, I mean, and to see what you had to do to unlock the original Super Nintendo tracks, I can't believe how much time I put into this game. I unlocked everything in there.
We did the same thing too. Again, it's just, I think if it wasn't portable, I may not have gone through all that effort, but I'm sure it was something where, my brother might have been playing a game, I was playing Mario Kart Super Circuit, or we were watching TV or something,
or vice versa. If you were playing,
vice versa, right. So I think it's one of the things where the portable nature made it perfect to kind of grind for that, and also the reward's pretty great. Like, you're getting like 16 or 20 tracks from Super Nintendo on top of the, probably at least 16 that they had in here. And yeah, we didn't rate it super high on our list, but it's also because the other games were just that much better.
Yeah.
But at the time, this was a huge deal for us. Like, in 2002, you have to consider the last Mario Kart was 97, and we played the hell out of that. And basically, like, we want more Mario Kart, so why not? And it's portable, and it looks really, really great. Like, I like the style. Like, it looks like the pseudo 3D style from N64, but a little bit more better looking because it's not so blurry, right? So, like you said, it's somewhere in the middle of N64 and Super Nintendo, but it does well enough to where it mashes both into a game that, for the time, was really freaking awesome. I really like that one.
Yep.
All right, the next one. I'm just going to mention this one because it's really just a disgusting effort.
Oh, yeah.
Before I mention the one I want to talk about, which is Mega Man Zero, but Mortal Kombat Advance. Like, oh my God, like, I try to be objective with a lot of, when I kind of look at games and kind of critique them. And sometimes, like, even the bad games have some stuff you can kind of overlook and, maybe like somewhat enjoy. Mortal Kombat Advance has to be one of the most rushed, worst ports of any game I've played on any system.
I didn't play this, luckily, back then, but I saw recent videos on it, and like, then I thought about how Killer Instinct and like Battle Arena Toshinden were on original Game Boy hardware, and they were actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
And then you see this on Game Boy Advance, and you're like, what the hell? Like, one guy was standing in the corner, he had the opponent backed into the corner, and there was no hit detection. He could not hit this person.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this piece of crap.
This is one of the worst. My brother always jokes. I don't know if you want to call it joking, if he says it seriously, but he says like it's not that bad, but it really is that bad because it is impressive that they got pretty much the entire roster of Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Like, there's so many characters to pick, but the problem is like the graphics are ugly, the controls are horrible, the AI is unbelievably unfair, like even more unfair than the original arcade games. It looks like garbage. There's just nothing good about this game, and this is also notorious because it received a 0 in EGM. Like the reviewer, like, when this is one of the times where it's like maybe a 0 was justified. Like maybe it could have been 1. I don't know, but there really isn't anything redeeming. It's fun because the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection has this available on it.
Oh yeah,
right. And you could play it, and like you could see it. Like, yeah, this is just hot garbage. It's really, really terrible, and it's just funny because I remember getting this. Like we got it at KB Toys back then. My brother got it for Christmas. Like he asked for it. I
remember seeing the box at your house.
Well, I saw the box here.
My
brother has the cart. Yeah, my brother has the cart, but it is just an atrocious Mortal Kombat mess. And obviously, we were huge Mortal Kombat fans, and this is just such a terrible game. But I had to mention because it is kind of a hilarious thing. Unfortunately, we paid money for it, but it's just a hilarious game that exists when it shouldn't exist. Like this is something that should have never been made.
It's good to throw in there because so far everything we've covered has been like, for the most part, ports.
Yeah, we're celebrating like all the fun stuff.
Yeah,
yeah, and this is one of the worst ports and worst games. Yeah,
it's like, yep, things could go bad.
Yeah, so I just had to shout that out because that's one of the worst things I've ever played in my life. And I played a shitload of games throughout my lifetime, but the games I did want to talk about were the Mega Man Zero series. We love Mega Man. We've always loved Mega Man, and Mega Man was I don't know where it was at this point. Like on PS2, I don't know if X7 had come out. I'm not really sure, but there was no 2D Mega Man really to speak of. Like I think this point they might have been releasing the Legacy collections or whatever they called them back then. I think it was Anniversary Collection is what it was.
Oh yeah.
And there was no sort of new 2D Mega Man since really like X6, I would say, which was, what was that, 98, 99, somewhere around there? I can't remember. Maybe it was even 2000. I can't recall. So the Mega Man Zero series came out, and it's very much a Mega Man game. Except now you play as like sort of a younger Zero. I think they're sort of prequels, or sort of, do they intersect, or are they in the future?
They're way in the future.
Oh, they're way in the future. Okay.
Yeah, so this Zero like has maybe a chip or something from the original Zero, but it's like 100 or so years, maybe even 1,000 years.
Oh, that's right, because he has the chip. That's right. I remember the chips you collect. Yeah. So these games are really fun, but holy crap, they're also really, really hard. Like these are the most difficult Mega Man games I've ever played in my life. Like so much so that I remember just being stuck at the first handful of bosses. Like there's no way to grind in here. The levels are really difficult. But again, like when you're sort of thirsting for Mega Man at that point, when you're a teenager and you want it on a new portable system, I'm not going to say we dealt with these, but these are all fantastic games. They're just insanely difficult.
The thing with Zero, like because he was playable in X4 and X5, is like you can't figure out the boss order based on like rock, paper, scissors like you could with Mega Man. Like, oh, this is a fire boss. Let me go fight the water boss first and get his power and then put out the fire. No, Zero was just like, here's a cool sword move.
Yeah. And then I think those chips really mattered too. And that was the other thing is I didn't really know where to go or where to look for them. So they did release a Mega Man ZX collection, I think it was called, and I got to revisit some of those games. Those definitely have some enhancements. I also think there's like an easier mode on there as well, which helps a lot because I love these games. They're really, really good. There's 4 of them on the Game Boy Advance. I think I only had like 2 and 3 if I recall. They're really great. Like they're still gorgeous games. They're still Mega Man games. I'd say the worst thing about them is that they're so freaking hard, even for veterans.
Super hard. Yeah, it's insane. I never played them until the collection that came out.
Oh, I see. Again, I thought you would have borrowed them from me or something.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't know if I just never really heard of them or thought about borrowing them from you. I was just like, maybe I had heard that they were hard, and I was like,
That's also possible, because even I was like, this is, I like it, but it's hard.
Yeah, but when I played them on the collection, I was like, I've beaten a couple bosses, and that's about it. And then I'm just like, oh, where do I go? Like, what do I do?
Yeah. Really cool games, though. I think, again, sort of hallmarks for GBA because they did look so nice and they did play so well, and they're really great games. They're just, I think, tuned a little bit too difficult. I don't know which one's easier across the 4.
I think I want to say 1. I've heard.
Is it 1? Okay, so the first one.
Yeah, and then they just ramp up after that.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Deucy, next one for you here.
I put this on another one that immediately popped into my head when I was trying to think of my whole collection. It's Wario Land 4. It was the only one to come out on Game Boy Advance, and back then I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but it's by the same people that did Fusion. or
Oh,
vice versa.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so you can kind of see it when you play Wario Land 4. A lot of the effects of the
Even
pixel art,
the color style. Actually, now that you mentioned, like it kind of looks like Fusion. I didn't even consider that. Wow.
when you like bash into enemies in Wario Land, it's kind of got the same effects of like smoke and stuff as when you shoot something in Fusion.
Wow.
And I was just like, whoa, that is awesome. And then Wario Land has always been cool. Like, I don't remember playing 2 and 3 that much on the original Game Boys, but I really liked the first one, Super Mario Land 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get Wario Land 4. And then I think the gimmick with this was he's like invincible.
Well, that's the gimmick with most of the Wario games.
Yeah,
I think it started with 3 as
yeah.
well. Yeah, like he just he absorbs enemies in a way, or he gets affected by the environment in some way. And
Yeah,
he has like a new power. Yeah,
and it's just a real fun side-scrolling collectathon, you might say.
it's great because it is the perfect anti-Mario. That's why I like Wario, because it really feels like they took the sensibility of like, okay, well, what would Mario do in this situation, but don't do that as Wario.
Yeah.
So it's great because they work really, really well. I unfortunately discovered this game way late. Like, I know this one, you owned it, and I never borrowed it for some reason.
And now I wish I could find it.
Yeah. I bet you do. I think, I did buy that one pretty recently. Yeah, I did get that one. But it's really great. Like, I think it's a gorgeous game. I think it's super fun because I did play Wario Land 3 a ton. Like, I rented that on a whim just because I hadn't played a Wario Land that I could remember. I might have played 2. Did you own 2 back then?
No, I owned 1.
Okay, so
you
maybe
might have borrowed that.
Yeah, and I played the Virtual Boy one. I finished that one. So that's the only relation to Wario I had at the time. I played 3. I was like, wow, this game's freaking awesome. It's kind of non-linear. It's like open world in a sense where you're going back and forth and backtracking.
Yeah.
And Wario Land 4 is a little bit more traditional where it's like I think it's by level, but there's a lot of collectibles in the middle of it. So that's
a lot of treasure.
The early stuff. Yeah. So I really like this game. I thought this is another standout on the GB. I think most people would probably say it's sort of a landmark game for the GBA for its time.
Yeah, it's weird how this though ended his like side-scrolling ways, and then he got into WarioWare stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Which was another big series that started on the GBA. That was a
Yeah.
whole unique thing they did there too. Yeah. Next one I'll talk about here is the F-Zero games. F-Zero Maximum Velocity, which was at launch. I remember renting that and loving it. And there's also GP Legend, which is an odd sort of story-based F-Zero game.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of cool. It's I think I remember it being really, really easy. I haven't played it in decades. Like, I just got this dirt cheap at Electronics Boutique back then.
I think it's on the Switch app now,
I believe
too,
it
isn't
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Switch also has the Japan-only one, which is called like, I forgot what the hell it's called.
Is it GP2? No, it's got another name.
It's got like Fusion Maximum Impact. I don't know what it is. Something like that.
Of course.
It's different, but it's also
Adjectives.
Yeah, it's really cool. But Maximum Velocity is the one I played the most, and that one is most like the Super Nintendo F-Zero, but obviously newer. It's faster, it's smoother. It also got really difficult. Like that one, I remember really having to learn how to sort of like feather the gas as you're going around corners and anything like that.
And slide,
And
quote unquote.
slide, yeah. So that was another big game because it had a really great sense of speed. And it just looked super nice. And it's also just a great sequel to what the Super Nintendo was, which, F-Zero 64 is one of my favorites, F-Zero X, I should say. And this was a great sequel to the Super Nintendo version. Like, this is like sort of a different flavor of F-Zero, but still great.
I feel like, because I didn't play it until it came out on Switch Online, but I feel like it made the old Super Nintendo version a little more accessible.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, more people were exposed to it by this time, too. Like,
Yeah.
a little bit more love. Yeah, for sure. All right, to see your next games.
Another series or trilogy, and I didn't play it until very recently, like really once we got the analog pockets.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
right? I remember you got all 3 of them.
Yeah, and no, I'm still looking for 3.
Oh, I thought you got it already.
No,
Okay.
that one's the elusive one. But Donkey Kong Country, the ports, quote unquote, that like surprised the heck out of me because they had enough added stuff and changed things that like it wasn't just Super Nintendo ports, that's what I sadly thought of when I first saw them coming out back then. I was like, oh, I don't need these portable.
Yeah, we've played them a million times.
Yeah, my Super Nintendo is still hooked up. I'll play it on there. And then I played them now, and I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is a great way to see how they could do ports of like the 3D character models. Donkey Kong Country was so unique on Super Nintendo, and now they could show it off that Game Boy Advance can do just the same amount of hard work when it comes to showing off the graphics and everything. Because they also ported Donkey Kong Country to Game Boy Color.
I remember those.
Which was like, okay.
Yeah, these work. They play well too, like their own unique games, and I think they're great for Game Boy Color, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I have the first one only, and it's great. Like it's
Yeah.
it's portable Donkey Kong Country. It's fine.
But yeah, once they came out on Advance, you were like, this was the Super Nintendo ones I wanted.
Yeah, they did look great too. Didn't they have extras as well, or was that the other one? Right? What did they have in these?
So they change up some of the boss fights, and then like Candy is no longer a save point because you can save anywhere. And
okay.
So she's got this like rhythm-based dance studio. And then also throughout the levels, you can collect these little cameras. And then you go into this photo thing and you can see pictures of the characters and things like that.
Oh, a little bit of a sort of like concept art or something.
Yeah.
Or little extras for, that's kind of cool. So you can unlock those. Yeah. A little bit of a bonus.
Yep.
Let's see. Next couple of games we'll talk about. I'm tying these together because I don't have a whole lot familiar with them because unfortunately I don't own these. I played them at the time, but it was Advance Wars and Golden Sun series. So Golden Sun was one of the earliest RPGs on the GBA because I remember there wasn't a whole lot of turn-based ones. And again, my buddy and I at the time, we were just looking for some sort of portable RPG. And like we knew that the GBA probably could do something really great with it at some point. And Golden Sun was that first step. I forgot to create this one. I forgot, maybe it was Camelot or something like that. I can't recall. But
it was somebody kind of known and you didn't expect it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I just remember being like a really gorgeous, again, like sort of Square Enix era kind of game, but it wasn't by Square. It had a really cool combat system. It was one of those series where I wish they had done more with it, but I think they died on the GBA. I don't think they released anything after the first two that I recall.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it unless there wasn't a GameCube like spin-off or anything, was there?
I have to look it up, actually. I don't remember, but I feel like these are one of those, this is a series that just sort of lived and died on the GBA. I have to look it up.
Didn't this have, like, it took into account the clock, the system clock, or was that on DS?
That might have been DS, because I don't think there was a system clock in
the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, unless you set it on the cart for Golden Sun, which is possible too, like if it had a battery or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one was Advance Wars, because this is sort of the start of that turn-based strategy, I guess army game. I don't even want to call it military sim in of sorts. But one of the big things that really struck me about this game is the gorgeous 2D sprite work. You have an overworld map where you're sort of advancing your units, and then when you go into battle, you have these really just amazing like Metal Slug, Neo Geo-esque sprite art that looked really great, and they're really real animated, and they just kind of like look really big and bombastic. Love these games. I unfortunately got the Advance Wars Remake 1 and 2 on Switch. I ended up trading away because I hated the art style, which is like kind of a silly thing to get out of it, right? But it looked too much like a mobile game. I just wasn't really having much fun, and I just wish it went back to like these 2D sprite art things. I don't know why. It just feels like maybe I'm just so closely tied to the original Advance Wars that it was hard for me to enjoy the newer one. But I wish they had done the sprite work because the original games were significant, partly for that reason, and also because they're just really well made and fun.
I picked up one of these recently, but I haven't played it yet. I didn't have the Analog Pocket yet, but I knew it was coming. Or no, actually, you surprised me with that. But like, I knew I wanted to play the Advanced Wars series finally because I knew the remake was coming, and I didn't realize that they kind of messed up on the graphics and everything.
Yeah,
but I had always seen like screenshots of this game, and I was like, this seems kind of right up my alley. I don't know why I never picked them up back then.
I feel like for you it'd be great because it's there's not because I'm the same with certain tactics games where if there's a million things to learn, sometimes just get overwhelmed and there's so much to manage that I don't want to deal with it. But these are where it's difficult enough, but you really have to kind of plot out your decisions, and they seem to matter, like where you disperse your units or where you're sort of setting certain defenses and everything like that. And I think you sort of like establish bases like once you take over a certain area. So it does just enough to where it's not too complex for me to be annoyed by. And again, like the art style and everything else is just so charming and fun to enjoy that I think you'd really like it if you did get into it.
Yeah.
All right, Deucy, I guess we're whittling towards the end before we get to our honorable mentions here. So I think we got a handful because we have some overlap in there too.
Yeah. Another trilogy I wanted to mention. I think I haven't played the third one yet because I got them recently. It's 2 and 3, but it's the Sonic Advance trilogy.
Oh yeah, these are great. I borrowed at least one of them from you.
Yeah, I had one or have somewhere still, but that's the one I own for sure. And then 2 and 3 I got, like I said, recently at a shop.
Okay, so I borrowed one from you back then. Okay, that makes sense.
And at the time, this was like where you went if you wanted classic 2D Sonic games, because we had the Sonic Adventures and those started getting ported everywhere. And then this was just sort of kind of one of those mind-blowing things to see Sonic on a Nintendo system and then on a handheld system of all things. But they did a really good job of not trying to add too much from like the adventure series or anything. Maybe his look, but everything else was just like classic spin dash and go fast left to right, the loop-de-loops, and then they included the grind system where you could like grind on rails.
Yeah, for Sonic Adventure 2.
Yeah. But other than that, it was just like fun. It was fun Sonic again.
Yeah, these were, I do remember when I borrowed this, I enjoyed it a lot because we'd been kind of absent for a 2D Sonic game for a while because like you said, there was Sonic Adventure. I don't know if games like Sonic Heroes had been out by this point, maybe, but there was just not a lot of 2D Sonic around except for like ports like this, not ports like this, but games like this, like maybe they would port it on their system or for a collection. So these were totally unique. They were really great Game Boy Advance games, and I'm right there with you where this was really shocking to see when there's just like a flood of Sega games coming. Like they had the Sonic Advance games. There's, we found out there's a Sonic Pinball Party game on there.
Yeah, that's not Sonic Spinball.
Yeah,
it's a whole new thing.
Yeah, and like Pinball of the Dead on the Game Boy Advance. Like there was so much Sega on Game Boy Advance that it was really awesome to be a gamer because now you had your Nintendo and your Sega all in one spot. And this is a great example of that.
I think, didn't they port over the original Sonic the Hedgehog onto
the first game? Yeah, I heard that port was pretty not great.
Yeah, it's really bad because of the scaling issues and everything. But if you wanted a good Sonic, just go over to the Advance because they were made on purpose for that system.
Yeah. And also, I will say one cool thing they did add to that GBA port was the Spin Dash, which, was great for Sonic 1.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, everything else was maybe not as great as that Spin Dash. But yeah, if you're going to pick between these, like, get one of the million other Sonic 1 ports in other places.
Yeah.
Go get Sonic Advance 1, 2, and 3 and check them out instead.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see, whittling away here. So I'll talk about the Doom and we'll talk about the Duke Nukem ports.
Yeah.
Because, the GBA was a 2D system, had a lot of 2D sprite-based games, but it still has sort of these cool considered sort of technological marvels in some sense, where they got the entire game of Doom 1 and 2, like they did ports for that. They did Duke Nukem 3D. And these were, a few steps above the Super Nintendo port of Doom because they actually ran better and looked better and sounded better. It still had some limitations, but again, like this was a time when Doom was not quite on being ported on everything like it is now, like even like birth control tests or anything like that.
I feel like this was how they started testing that theory out.
It could be. Like if we could fit on a GBA, we could fit on anything.
Yeah.
I've only played the first Doom port. I don't think I played Duke Nukem. I know you have more experience with that. But I remember enjoying it a lot because, again, it was portable Doom. It worked well enough. I know that it doesn't sound as good as the other versions. But again, like it's on the GBA and it's a bit of a marvel for me, the fact that they managed to condense Doom in that tiny screen with everything else that it has.
They were already halfway there when they condensed it onto Super Nintendo.
That's right. Yeah. And there's a ton of other first person shooters on GBA as well. And they sort of have the same sort of checkered history where it's like some were great, some were not great. But I think that was part of the GBA. It's like, if you struck gold on a good first-person shooter, it was a good day. Otherwise, it's like, well, this is crap like 95% of the other games.
I think, so like you said, I had more experience with the Duke Nukem one. I don't even remember if I saw Doom back in the day. Maybe on the store shelves or something.
Maybe.
But Duke Nukem Advance, when I saw that come out, I was like, me, I'm the Duke kid.
Yep.
And I had to get it and try it out. And it's not a port. It's not a port of 3D.
Oh, is it? I thought it was.
It's an original story and everything. You start out in like Area 51 sort of thing. And,
okay.
And you got the basic aliens coming after you, and then there's already like in the first or second level, there's like little gray aliens that are like shooting mind rays at you. It's a little awkward because there's no background music while you're playing.
Oh, that's weird. Was there a lot of background music in the originals? Because I feel like I passively noticed that.
No, when you think about it, probably not. Only when you go into certain sections like the strip clubs or something. That
makes sense.
But there is at least ambiance. Like you can hear cars screeching in the background.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Or like when you're in the alien ships, it goes wom 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 wom, that sort of thing. That's nothing in Advance. There's like silence and then the sound effects of you shooting or walking, and then as soon as you push pause, it's the classic Duke theme. They got that right at least.
That's funny.
But like, it might not be a great Duke Nukem game because of the limitations, but I was very impressed with what they did. They have all the guns you can think of. They have the basic system of find a key card or find a button to unlock that door. They have all the enemies coming after you, the ones that you know from Duke 3D. So they even have, I think they had some voice work in it, like very rough. And I don't think it's any new voice work.
I'm sure it's garbled and compressed.
Yeah.
Which, again, whatever, right?
It's all the classic lines, and they just sort of shoehorn them in to make them work.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's very impressive that the Game Boy Advance of all systems can run this.
Yeah, and tangentially to this, it's interesting because now there's a lot of fan hacks and like sort of fan versions of games, and like people are porting like Tomb Raider on there. They ported Quake, and they look, again, like these are people who have much more experience over the last 25 years on how to sort of optimize these games.
I could see classic Tomb Raider fitting on there.
I could see that too. Like it feels like a good adventure game on there, and I'm sure it's it's a compressed dithered little bit of a mess, but again, it's impressive that it exists, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Like the GBA was a sprite-based system in my eyes, but it still did some cool tricks if you can make it work, which hit or miss, it worked.
Yeah.
All right, Deucy, I guess I think we're getting down to like the last couple of games we want to chat about here before we get to our hidden gems. So what do we want to chat through here?
I've got one last one before the hidden gems.
Okay.
And that another one that I recently got into, but if you're talking about Game Boy of any type, you'd be remiss if you did not mention Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because really, like, one of the big reasons the Game Boy was able to persist in the middle of like console gaming not being really, portable gaming not being a big deal, because again, like Wonder Swan, Neo Geo, they were smaller systems, but I think one of the things that held the Game Boy up was Pokemon when it released, because it was on an aging system, but that revitalized that system to no end, and it sold way more after that.
That was a crazy injection of new life to the original Game Boy.
It really was.
And then I want to say Gold and Silver were out on Game Boy Color, or they could do both.
I think they were both. Yeah.
And then the Pokemon Crystal was Game Boy Color only.
That's right. Yes.
And then what was the next generation that came out on Advance?
It was Alpha and Ruby?
Ruby and Sapphire.
Ruby and Sapphire, yes.
And Emerald, that was their third one. I never played those, but I heard those were pretty good.
I wish I had played those too, because again, I saw a billion of those at Circuit City.
Yeah.
Never bought them because I was out of Pokemon.
And now their prices. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I recently picked up Fire Red, and you almost had Leaf Green.
Yeah, I bought it. The card I got was unfortunately broken, so I emulated it on my Steam Deck, and I'm glad I did.
And these are ports of the originals, which is really what I wanted. I heard Ruby and Sapphire were good, but those are the more modern ones.
Well, they're more like remakes more than anything else.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like they look like a GBA game. They're colorized.
Yep.
The animations are really gorgeous. I was really impressed when I finally got to play this on my Steam Deck. Like, I would like to get my own copy. But I'm with you. Like, this is what I wanted originally for Pokemon, because I loved Pokemon Blue, and this is just Gen 1, but remade.
I think there's some quality of life improvements. I don't remember too much of the originals to see the differences.
Yeah.
Because it is still very grindy. You have to go into a lot of battles and level up and make sure you have the right types for the gyms. Mm-hmm. It's not like Let's Go, where you can sort of breeze through a lot of the stuff. But I was just happy to have this newer version that looks so much better but still plays like the original that I grew up on. Yeah,
it's truly stellar on the Game Boy Advance. Like, I think it's great that this is sort of the next step of Pokemon. Like, they're already doing remakes a generation later, right? But really effective. It's maybe I'm a little salty they didn't have like a pure Pokemon Blue remake. Like, I have Leaf Green, which is close enough.
Yeah, what Water Blue? Where's Water Blue?
Yeah, well, it's weird when you consider, like, in the U.S. we only got red and blue. Japan got we got yellow too, right? But Japan got green, red, and blue. And then for the remakes, they just chose, well, we'll just go with green and red.
America didn't get green. Here's green.
Yeah, exactly. Here's when you're green. Yeah, but really great Pokemon games. Like, these are. Some Pokemon games are hard for me to get into because I'm just not into the hand-holdiness of it. But Gen 1 always holds a soft spot for me because of, I grew up with that. And yeah, these two remakes are just stellar. Like, I'd like to get an actual copy sometime that works. But in the meantime, my Steam Deck will be just fine.
Yep.
The last game I'll briefly touch on before we get to our hidden gems is one I played pretty recently. It's Kirby and the Amazing Mirror.
Oh, yeah.
This is on the Switch app, by the way. I didn't get to play this way back when because I really just couldn't find it, and I also wasn't terribly interested at the time, probably because of money, whatever else. But really great game. It's very much like the 16-bit versions. It's sort of non-linear, where you go through like these different doors and different levels, and half the fun of Kirby's like eating and swallowing enemies to find out what new abilities you have. This feels like a treasure game, but I don't think it actually is a treasure game.
Oh,
worth checking out, Deucy, if you haven't played it.
I briefly started it on the Switch app.
Oh, did you?
I don't know. I don't remember a thing about it.
I got through the first few levels and I was like, damn, this is a really freaking great GBA.
Yeah, I thought it was like really pretty, like a really good Kirby looking game.
Yeah, right. That's again another signature sort of gorgeous sprite graphics.
Kirby fits well on Game Boy Advance because he's already so bright and colorful. Like
he does.
You can play it on the classic ones and
you
still see him
on the dark screen just fine. Yeah. So I just want to give that one a little bit of attention because it is a really cool game. I know it's probably not the most popular game on the GBA, but it's still a really, really fun one.
Yeah.
All right, Deucy. So we got through a lot of stuff. So now we'll go through some of our hidden gems here. You and I have several different amounts, so maybe not. We won't get through all of them, but we'll chip away at this here. So the hidden gems are really just what they are. There's these games that I think, in my respect, at least for my criteria, was games that I thought were really, really fun or really, really great in some instances, and just kind of went under the radar. No one really gave them much attention. So Deucy, go ahead, chip away with yours here.
My first one, and this is one game that I owned, and another one that immediately popped into my head called Gadget Racers. And it's based on these little cars in Japan, these little toy cars that you pull back and let go.
Yeah, they remind me of like Micro Machines.
Yeah, and other games have been made about these, like Penny Racers on N64.
Penny Racers, Road Trip. So this is based on the Churro Q series in Japan.
Yes.
Like there's a bunch of different games. There's also Churro Q games in the US, I think, but they all been renamed like Penny Racers, Gadget Racers, Road Trip Adventure. Really charming games, I would say.
And this, I mean, it looks like just your average budget racer. And I know I got it as a birthday gift from a friend who they were probably like shopping with their parents looking for something. And they were like, well, he has a Game Boy and he likes racing, so let's get him this. And luckily they did, because it was like surprisingly fun. This was the definition of a hidden gem for me, because I was not expecting anything much of it. I was like, well, I've got Mario Kart, but this is also awesome. Like, it's got the whole Mode 7 look. The little car sprites are awesome looking.
I really love the look of the cars because they're sort of compact and tiny, but they also have like this weird they're cartoony feel to them.
They're real world cars and then just like super scrunched up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, Micro Machines or something like that. It's got a surprising amount of depth when it comes to customization. And then as you're going through like the career mode, the different races will come up that will require different things. Like you could have a super fast car, like a Toyota like supercar, but because of the terrain, you're going to need to put tank treads on it.
So I played this last night because after you mentioned, it's like I don't remember this game at all. I ended up going on eBay. I found one that was actually cheaper than what was on like on price charting, and I played last night. I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool, because pretty much everything you just said was what impressed me last time when I played. I was like, wow, like, there's actually a pretty in-depth shop system, sort of a customization system that you could set up your car loadouts, so to speak. And there's different race types. And it's fun because it starts off super slow and the steering is super stiff.
Yeah.
Right. But as you level up from buying parts in the shop, I guess it becomes probably easier to control.
Yeah, you can buy parts that are like better steering, better handling, better acceleration. And it also, like, I remember it switches back and forth. At one point, you'll have like an auto gear, and then if you want the better stats, you better go to manual.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and then there might be an auto gear that's actually better stats than the manual, so you'll switch back over to auto. It was just really a fun time. It's like, and it's also like not super serious because you can race like a giant trash truck. And stuff
that was
like
one of the options I had there.
And the music is very light and I want to say chibi. I don't know if that's what it is, but it's like very light-hearted and it feels very Kirby-ish.
It's pretty basic. Like if there's two criticisms I have, which I don't even want to call them criticisms because it's such an old game, but the music's kind of basic. Like it's almost NES level, which is it's fine. It's inoffensive. It's fine. And then it does kind of chug a little bit. Like the frame rate's a little bit like right. But again, like I don't care. Like it was still fun enough to where the track that it really feels like a Mario Kart game, but maybe a little more on the sim side, obviously, right? But not necessarily simulation, just in terms of how it feels how it starts. But the career mode's pretty cool. Like there's a lot of different races and events where you collect money, you can improve your times or get better podium placings. I
did like that when you buy these stat upgrades, you can feel the stat upgrades.
Yes, it's definitely noticeable. Like I got the manual transmission, the steering is like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait till I get to level this up and have an actual functioning car.
Yeah.
Really great game though. I'm glad you pointed that one out because I was like, okay, cool. It's only $30 for everything for a complete copy, and it's pretty damn fun. One I'm shouting out here is, this might be my favorite out of the list next to Astro Boy here. It's Drill Dozer. This is A game that came out in 2005-ish.
Every time you say that name, I always think of Bill Dozer from King of the Hill.
Oh yeah, yeah, Bill Dozer. And I always think of Dozer from The Matrix.
Yeah,
that's the other one. Yeah, Drill Dozer. Very unique game. It's super gorgeous. Has some of the best graphics on the GBA, I think, as far as like art style and everything. And the reason is because it's from Game Freak, who made Pokemon.
Oh,
so this is their sort of non-Pokemon game that released in I think it was like 05, 04. And no one played this. Like, my friend Brandon and I was excited to play it out, and then I got it. And I was like, wow, this is really fun. It's sort of a non-linear game where you go through these different levels, and you have a drill weapon that you rev up with the L and R. And it's cool because you collect gears and levels, which can further power it up to get through more harder obstacles.
Yeah.
And also does some cool things where it's like you can use it for platforming, where you'll sort of drill into like this thing that holds you across a chasm or something like that. Or you'll use the drill to hold on to like this gelatinous cube and then propel yourself backwards to get on a higher platform.
Nice.
Really, really unique ideas, really great platformer. Unfortunately, no one played it because apparently this came out sort of in the middle of the DS launching or somewhere around that time. So people just dismissed it. It sold poorly, but it sucks because it's such a gem, and also has this really cool rumble feature, which really unique to the GBA. The cartridge is taller than most GBA cartridges, but it has a little bit of a rumble pack on there, and it's just slight enough of a rumble that it adds to the drilling feature. So as you rev up your drilling, the rumbling intensifies. It's just such a fun game. I hope you'll play it at some point, Deucy. If they put it on the Switch app, you'll play it, or if you borrow mine.
I hope they put it on the Switch app, yeah.
Yeah, super cool game. Again, by Pokemon, you wouldn't expect it, but this, in my eyes, really just is emblematic of hidden gems on the GBA.
I'm sure people back then were like, stop it, Game Freak. Go back to playing or making Pokemon.
I would feel so, because if you look at their sort of gameography, you see it's like Pokemon, Drill Dozer, Pokemon. Yeah. Nintendo's like, we let you fly your wings. You failed, not because of us. Stick to Pokemon.
We were contractually obligated to give you one original game.
Yeah, exactly.
Another one I'll mention as a hidden gem. I don't know. Maybe it was talked about more, but
I feel like it wasn't, because I barely knew this existed until you and I found it at the store.
Yeah, and it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Battle Nexus. And it's coming from the era of, I want to say it's like the 2003 Ninja Turtles, where they're a little more edgy. And I heard that it's a great series. They had a lot of more adult sort of stories. Probably for all of us that grew up with the originals and wanted
would make sense.
new Turtles. But I never paid attention to those series or those games. And unfortunately, I missed out on a good one on Game Boy Advance. This one, you go through the levels, you get to pick which turtle you want, but each turtle has like a different move. So you can go through the level multiple times because there might be some collectibles and things that only a certain turtle can get. Like I think Mikey, I want to say he can hover with his nunchucks. He can spin them like a helicopter.
Yeah,
and I want to say Raph can climb walls like Wolverine in the old X-Men games.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, like this was a really fun time, and it's very bright. There's even some voice acting in this one too. It's surprising how much Game Boy Advance had voice work.
Yeah, parallel to yours, I'll show up my pick for TMNT, and that was actually called TMNT, which was, I think it was released around 2007, 2008, but this is based on that
CG
animated
movie?
CG movie that we actually saw in theaters back then. That was actually pretty solid from what I remember.
That was a fun one. Yeah.
I enjoyed it, yeah. And then my brother got this probably because it was cheap. I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty badass little beat 'em up. Like, it's not going to do anything that blows you away, but at a time when I think most TMNT games maybe weren't as great as they used to be, this was sort of like that shining light in the midst of all of them. I was like, this is actually like really, really fun. I'm enjoying myself with it. I don't think it has the range of abilities like in the one you mentioned here.
Yeah.
But it still has like some sort of, like each character has their own special abilities and it's probably their special stats. Really great beat 'em up for what it is. I think it's fairly cheap too, but this is one of those things where I wouldn't have expected this to be as good as it was had my brother not bought it just on a whim.
I feel like that's the story with a lot of the Turtles, Marvel games, stuff like that, where like they're surprisingly good beat 'em ups, but you wouldn't expect or even think to play them because they're side scrollers or something like that.
Yeah, you almost like kind of dismiss them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of rational, but again, like, we were like 18, 19 at the time, limited money. We're not going to spend our money on everything or something,
Give us those pretty graphics.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want these condensed images. But yeah, now we have to go back to these and revisit them and be like, yeah, this is actually better than I expected 25 years later. Just
a warning and a heads up is the one I mentioned, Battle Nexus, is pretty pricey.
Yeah, that one was pretty pricey.
And I was surprised I got a complete version.
Oh, I forgot you got a complete. Even more badass. Yeah. All right, Deucy. Next one on your list here.
I wanted to. This was another one that I consider a hidden gem. I'm sure reviewers didn't review it too well considering where it came from, but the Banjo and Kazooie Game Boy Advance version, Grunty's Revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I picked this up, I just picked it up because I like Banjo Kazooie, and I was pleasantly surprised with how it is. It's very much like the ones on N64. It's just a weird like top down perspective, and
like over the top or the isometric
top down sort of. So that is one detriment to it, is like the levels are still pretty intricate and large like on N64, but you can't see very well.
Oh yeah, I bet some of the jumps are probably difficult too sometimes with that angle. Maybe
actually it's pretty good. The controls are all really nice, and you get a lot of the moves from the game. A lot of the moves though you have to learn, like a lot of the basic ones. Oh, what's also cool is you split up from Kazooie, and you can do Kazooie moves, which I think they implemented in Banjo-Tooie.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And this one I know came out between the two. This is sort of like a direct sequel to the first game. But yeah, so you get individual moves for each of them, or they team up. In fact, a lot of the first level is Banjo looking for Kazooie. She's been kidnapped. And yeah, so other than the camera, you can't really scroll it and see. As long as you have a pretty good sense of direction, you can sort of remember where you have to go. Like, because sometimes you'll see a jiggy or something and you're like, oh, but I have to do something else first.
Yeah.
Just like in the originals. So you have to go over, hit a switch, kill an enemy or something, and then remember your way back up to the other part. But yeah, I've been actually cruising pretty quickly through this. I'm in like the world 2 or 3 of it, and I don't see myself stopping. It was really fun.
Yeah, I wish I had played this one back then, because you got this fairly recently, right? I think we got out of the store and you're like, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Because I think I probably dismissed it for the same reason back then, where I wasn't sold on like a collectathon platform on the GBA most of the time, because I know that the ones I did pay attention to as far as reviews were just kind of like middling to just, not really worth playing. And, we were always investing more in the GameCube and other systems as well. But this one's one of those ones that I wish I did get to try back then. It's just, you didn't rent it, I didn't rent it, so we just didn't play for 20 years.
I think for a while there, I forgot it even existed.
I'm pretty sure I did too. I always remember Banjo Pilot, more remember this one.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, and that one was not good comparatively, I'm sure. All right, I'll shout out a couple here because we're getting down to the last couple, Deucy. So let's see. I'll go through Ninja 5.0. I mentioned that earlier in the show when Diluted Thought mentioned it. This is I was really looking for this game at the time, and it's one that I could never find anywhere for sale, ever. It was really hard to find, but it was sort of like a mashup of Bionic Commando and like Rolling Thunder or something like that. Sort of like a side-scrolling general action game, except you're a ninja and you have like a grappling hook, you have your shurikens and everything like that.
Also, for people hearing the title, yes, it is what it implies. You're a ninja cop.
Yeah, it's really great. So it's got all 80s cheese all over it.
Yeah.
I played it way after the fact because I got on an emulator, because unfortunately this game is really hard to find. It was really expensive a long time ago. Like I remember seeing a complete copy for $200, thinking like, oh geez, that's expensive as hell.
Yeah, practically like right after the Game Boy Advance died, it was like shooting up.
That's what it felt like. Like this felt like an instant rare game. Like they probably released, I don't know, a couple of thousand copies, it felt like, because now a complete copy is like $800, and I think the cart's probably $200 or $300.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy it. It's not worth that obviously at all, and that's why you should get like the new port, the digital re-release. But again, unique game to the GBA. It's just one of those games that most people didn't pay attention to. I imagine most people never even heard of, because it does sound like a generic NES game, Ninja 5.0.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a really fun ninja cop game.
It sounds like it should be an 80s B movie.
Yeah.
B action movie.
Yeah. Then I'll mention Boktai, The Sun Is In Your Hand. This is a unique Hideo Kojima game. He plays like this little vampire hunter.
I never knew it was his.
Yeah, it was. This was like one of his big things outside Metal Gear. So sort of like Game Freak did Drill Dozer, and Hideo Kojima did a game where he plays like a sort of like a childlike vampire hunter, where the sun is your weapon. It has a light sensor on the cart, so it was sort of encouraging you to go outside and touch grass.
Thanks, Hideo.
Yeah, right. And the idea was like the sun would charge your weapons in game. Now, you didn't have to do that because the game obviously had like these charging stations in there. I assume that the sun just made it easier to keep your weapons replenished the whole time. So super cool game. I'm sure it's pretty rare now, unfortunately, but really unique GBA game, I would say. And then I'll talk about real quick the Street Fighter Alpha 3 port, because I got this
pretty decent.
I got this recently. Like I found it at a store we shopped like a year ago, something like that. And I always wanted to play this as well back then because they also had a port of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but I just really couldn't find it back then. Like, it just wasn't something that was available for some reason. But Alpha 3, really amazing port for what it is. They got every single character from the console version. It actually plays really well. Like, the sprites are obviously smaller because of the GBA screen, but it has all the moves. I was able to do the Raging Demon. Now you have to consider there's only 4 buttons on here and there's 6.
Is B punch and A kick?
I believe so.
And then the L and R makes them harder.
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yes. And if you hold one, I think that's like medium or something like that.
Huh.
So there's some limitations.
Yeah.
But it works. So that's my point is, like, despite the limitations of 4 buttons and the GBA screen and hardware, it plays ridiculously well for a condensed fighting game. Like, this is, contrast to like Mortal Kombat Advance, or like you said, some of the early GB games where it's like, they really had to make some compromises to fit on there and actually play well, which, they don't play terribly well. They play well enough for Game Boy games, but this is about as good as you can get for a portable system.
Like, like I said, finally there's like a fighting game that you could play portable. Like, yeah, because you had Street Fighter 2 on the original Game Boy and you're like,
yeah, like, I accept this because I want to play it portably, but it's not very good.
Yeah, no, now you're like, I got to seek this out.
Yeah. All right, Deucy, we'll get to your final hidden gem before I nail out my last 2.
I almost forgot about this one, but this is probably the most recent hidden gem that I've picked up. And I had seen it first on a brief clip on YouTube. There was like a brief review of it, and I was like, man, this looks awesome. And then like practically the next day, we found it at one of the shops that we go to, and I was like, okay, immediate purchase. Mm-hmm. It is the Star Wars trilogy, Apprentice of the Force, and it's the original trilogy, Luke, Han, Leia. It came out around the same time as the first special editions of the original trilogy came out. So you'll notice on the box cover, it's got the same little silver and black that those VHSs did.
Yeah, and the DVD sets as well. Like, they had that widescreen one that was like that silver and black Darth Vader. Yeah, and again, I remember this vividly because I was working at the Circuit City, and we had a billion of these, and that's why I dismissed it. I was like, I don't know if these are good, and then you discover they're actually really, really good.
Yeah, they're super fun. They are based on the engine of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time for Game Boy Advance. So Luke is sort of like loosey-goosey, kind of like the Prince was.
Really fluid, loose.
But, you go through the first couple levels, you're in the deserts of Tatooine. It's almost like Super Star Wars, only easier. Like, you can actually get through them. And they have a lot of text. There's no voice acting, but they have a lot of text straight from the movies. So I want to get power converters or whatever is like in the game for no reason, really. You're talking to Uncle Owen there. And then you go through the levels and you start to level up. As you kill, you don't get XP or anything. It's just as you get to the next level, in the second level of Tatooine, all of a sudden you have like a Jedi dash. Even though you haven't really you've met Obi-Wan, but he hasn't really taught you anything. You're still trying to get Han and everything. So you have a Jedi dash. You get through the rest of the game. They have a Death Star trench run with the X-Wing, which is super hard because it's sort of like the turbo tunnel in Battletoads.
That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. And then you move on to the next game. All the movies are very condensed, but you play all 3 of the originals in one game, and it's a portable game, so they had to make it kind of short so that you could get through it. And by Empire, now you've got a lightsaber, and you can just start swinging and slashing everything.
That's cool. It just sounds like it has a ton of variety that I wouldn't have expected from a game like that.
And like I said, every time you get like a new thing. By Return of the Jedi, you get like a force heal, and you sit there and meditate to get your life back and stuff like that. And you get like double jumps or spinny, like flippy sword attacks and things like that. It's surprisingly good.
Yeah, I have to check that out myself because you showed me that video where they was talking about how good it was. I was like, oh, I'm very surprised about this. And then you found it and told me it was actually pretty badass to play.
Yeah, he was not lying.
He was not lying. This is a hidden gem.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Deucy, we'll finish off our episode today with 2 Treasure games because we do love Treasure, the developer. They released, Gunstar Superheroes, which is an episode we did an episode way back. They did Sin and Punishment on the N64. They did that McDonald's game that apparently is very, very good.
Yeah.
And GBA, they were doing some great stuff because we discovered they did an Animaniacs game, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
Which we have to play. Or no, it was a Tiny Toons game as well, I think. Did they do both?
They might have done both.
I think they did both. So we have to track those down.
The Tiny Toons one was the biggest surprise.
Yeah, that one's also one of the most expensive, unfortunately. Yeah. But the 2 I had access to and still own, fortunately, is the first one I'll talk about is Gunstar Superheroes. This is just what it is. It's a sequel to Gunstar Heroes, but super. It's just a lot of what you love from the first Genesis game, but now it just looks and plays better. It still has the weapon switching mechanic and also combine the two weapons.
Nice.
I want to say this was co-op. I can't really remember if it had a co-op option. I want to say it had link cable support too. Really great game. I don't know if it's been released since then. I always forget if it's on the GBA app or not, but it should be.
No, it's not there. I would have played it.
I guess you would have played by then. Yeah. But really cool game, really worth tracking down because again, it's treasure, and I think they're really successful with 2D games, and the GBA felt like they were very comfortable with.
Oh yeah,
all the games I've played by them, they just played so freaking great, and like they knew what they were doing.
I think isn't the Tiny Toons game or one of them kind of like Gunstar Heroes, which you wouldn't expect?
Well, I think that's what tipped me off because we saw videos of it, and we're like, I didn't know about this game existing, and then I was like, this looks like, I looked it up and said treasure. I was like, well, now I see exactly why. Like, just the graphical effects and some of the sound effects, like it sounded like a treasure game.
Yeah.
So I was shocked about that Tiny Toons one. We have to track that down or play it on the emulator or something because I didn't know it existed. And I was shocked that they did it. And the last game we'll mention that I really put a ton of time into was Astro Boy: The Omega Factor. This is based on an anime that I have no familiarity with. It's Astro Boy. He's like this robotic boy who has like these, sort of mechanized android powers. Like he has like a giant beam he could shoot.
I always felt like Mega Man was based on him because I think he was out first.
Yes, he was. He's been out since probably the 60s or something like that. So yeah, actually, Mega Man is a perfectly apt parallel for Astro Boy.
Yep.
But this game was really good. It's got all the hallmarks of Treasure, where everything's just really loud, really fast paced. It has different styles like shoot 'em up, platforming. I wish I saw the box for this because it's expensive now. But this, again, I had no familiarity with Astro Boy, and I wasn't until I was seeing previews. I was like, this game looks freaking awesome. Plus, I knew of Treasure because of Gunstar Heroes.
Yeah.
And this is just another. This might be the best game they've done on the GBA because it's their most original. Like they have a license and they seem to have matched whatever Astro Boy isms that Astro Boy does.
That sounds like perfect for a side scroller and stuff
exactly
like that.
Right. Yeah, like I remember like he has this giant beam attack that looks like a freaking Dragon Ball thing. Because I think it's like you build up your meter by doing attacks and attacking enemies and comboing them.
Doesn't he even have like a robot dog companion or I can't remember.
He might. I have to look that up because that does sound familiar.
Yeah.
He might be part of the game as well. But the GBA game, if you can track it down, I know it's getting pricey. It's worth playing or just get it on emulator. But this is one of those things where I really wish Treasure would do some sort of like crazy sort of a developer collection. I know it'd be hard because they have like licensed properties like this, like Astro Boy and Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, but it'd be so awesome to have something like this all in one spot. Astro Boy, I think, is one of those games that came out, and I don't know anything about the anime, and I think that's probably one of the things that most people weren't into at the time. Was anime was starting to be a big deal in the US.
Yeah,
but
mostly Dragon Ball.
Mostly Dragon Ball, yeah. And Astro Boy was a weirdly niche thing, at least it felt like to me when I was a teenager. And this game is something you can enjoy despite having not any kind of familiarity or know what the hell Astro Boy is. Because it wanted me to learn more about the anime.
Yeah.
I don't know if I did back then, but I was like, this is really badass because he's just like a badass character and he does so much, All right, Deucy, we went through a lot today. We went through the whole history of the GBA on its 25th anniversary as it comes up in June, and we talked about all of our fantastic games.
I'm sure we forgot a lot, too.
There's a lot we forgot because I was trying to. I mean, we had like a pretty substantial list, and there's a lot of stuff that we had on our list that kind of overlapped. But there's a lot more stuff on the GBA, and I think that's why it's such a great portable system, and that's why it has such a lasting legacy. Is that it's Nintendo being Nintendo at their peak, where they knew that they didn't need to get they needed to sort of advance themselves more than they needed to, right? They didn't want to do things too early. Like they could release a GameBoy Advance like in the mid 90s, maybe wouldn't have been as good, maybe it failed. And maybe we have Pokemon to thank for the fact that the GBA was delayed until they got to a point where they felt like they could do a color system that was almost I think it was 32-bit, but you know what I'm saying? Like the Super Nintendo-esque portable experience that they eventually made.
Well, I think it's because Super Nintendo was their strongest effort, and like they were keeping up with Sega, and they were even beating them at some point. And then it started to go a little rocky when N64 came out and GameCube and stuff like that. So to have the Game Boy Advance be sort of like this extension of Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that's true.
Like Nintendo was right at home with what they knew, and they were like, yeah, let's just make it better.
Yeah. And the GBA was such a great system for having ports, sort of remakes, I guess we'll call them, brand new, unique games, and games that really just do things that other games would never dare to do. Like I go back to Drill Dozer and games like that where, those are totally unique experiences. You really can't, or Boktai, right?
Yeah.
It has so many games that we didn't even cover where it just has these unique mechanics that probably won't be done anywhere else, probably haven't been done since, But the GBA was, like I said, sort of that experimentation pool where they have these unique games that you really couldn't get anywhere else in any other system. They were just sort of tailored for the GBA on the GBA.
Yeah.
And if you have anything you want to talk to us about as far as the GBA or any of your favorites or hidden gems, you can reach out to us at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. And of course, we're on Instagram at Legion Podcast. Deucy, any final words for our friends who are probably going to go play more Game Boy Advance?
This was a great episode for, just covering the whole system. I'm glad we didn't do a top 10 because I could not order.
This would have been tough.
Of these.
I think we had a hard time just nailing down like our list here and talking through them because we're at what, like, oh my god, like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so much more we could have talked about.
All about one system.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's cool that we split it up in sort of an informal top 10, even though it wasn't 10 or whatever it was.
Yeah. And on to the 81 and beyond. Press start to continue.
Thank you, everyone.